That's it, right? Good? We're good? Okay. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to call the meeting of the Planning and Zoning Commission for Wednesday, August 16th, 2017 to order. Could we please, anybody like to choose to rise for the national anthem? Pledge allegiance. I'm reading while I'm doing it. Yeah, right? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. For the benefit of those who may or may not have participated in a Planning and Zoning Commission meeting, our procedures are as follows. 1, we'll read the legal call of the meeting as published in local newspapers. The applicant will then be invited to come forward and present the case, explaining to the Commission and others present what is being requested of the property. Comments of town agencies will be read for each application if there are any. There will be clarifying questions from the Commissioners, then there will be an opportunity for clarifying questions from the audience. First, those who wish to support the application may come forward, and second, those who oppose the application will then be invited to come forward and express their opinion. As this is a public hearing, it must be recorded. It's necessary for all speakers to identify themselves by stating their name and address before addressing the Commission. The applicant is then free to leave or remain for the balance of the public hearing in the regular meeting, at which time the Commission will try to reach a decision on each application. Each applicant will be notified in writing as to the decision of the Commission and has a right to appeal in Superior Court if desired. Decisions of the meeting are available the day after the meeting by calling the Planning and Zoning Office at 203-453-8039 after 9 a.m. Seated this evening are the following Planning and Zoning members. We have Phil Johnson, we have Rich Meyer, Alan Brown, I'm Frank DeAndrea, Dick Wallace, and Walter Corbiere. We do have staff present tonight. We have Reggie Reed, George Kroll, and we have our recording secretary, Lisa Brewer, and our videographer this evening is Peter Schultz. The secretary will now read the legal notice.
We have nothing to notice this meeting, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, great. So before we get started, a couple announcements I'd like to do. First is I just wanted to thank Tom Cost, who's no longer on the, he's been reseated on the Planning and Zoning, or replaced, right, retired. So I want to thank him for his service. I believe he did 8 years plus chairman roles. So Tom, we'll miss you and thank you very much. Next, I'd also like to congratulate our recording secretary on her engagement, Lisa Brewer. Yay. Congratulations. And if anybody is here for Derek Streeter application, it has been withdrawn. So if that's the only reason you're here, you guys can feel free to stay or you can leave. So.
That's the Moose Hill Road project.
Yes, the Moose Hill Road project. If hearing none, then I'd like to open it up. We are on our second public hearing of 66 High Street, Guilford, LLC.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission. Attorney Marjorie Shansky for 66 High Street, Guilford, LLC. I noticed that there are 3 commissioners this evening who were not at the meeting on August 2nd. I'm wondering, simply for context, because I would state more redundantly than I would otherwise if they hadn't had an opportunity yet to review the tape.
2 hours and 15 minutes.
There you go.
I'll have to withdraw.
Well, I don't think the hearing will necessarily close this evening, so you may still have a chance.
Okay. We'll do our best to close
Mr.
it.
Wallace?
I'll be able to catch it by next time.
Yes, thank you. Okay, so we listened very carefully to the neighbors and come this evening with answers to questions that were posed, corrections and clarifications on misleading information that the Commission received, and I guess a more detailed description of compliance with your special exception standards, and I'm going to go through those. So let me give you this letter. So we can follow along together. Let me grab another. another hand.
Thank you. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
I'm also here with Ron Nault, the engineer from Luke's Consulting, and he will show you some of the things. In fact, you may want to put up some of the things so that they're behind me as we discuss this. There were a lot of conclusory statements and allegations presented at the last meeting, and I think it's important to note that opposition and disagreement are not evidence. Speculation, of which there was an abundant amount, is not a valid proxy for proof or evidence. So with respect to your Section 273-99 special permit criteria, the first one relating to location, type, character, and use of the use and of any building. In this letter, I captured the original answer, which is in italics, and the augmented answer, tonight's detailed answer, is in bold. And so I'm going to focus on bold concepts this evening, but not at the exclusion of what's there above it, for those of you who didn't see my original letter. Swimming pools are conventional residential amenities in the same category as hot tubs and fire pits in the backyard of neighbors to the property. We are providing this evening elevations that will establish the extraordinary limits of alteration to the existing structure. You will see, and I've appended to this letter 8.5 by 11 copies of the elevations, though we'll show you them larger for everybody. Of the elevations, the eastern elevation, the front of the house, I think the front of the house is the eastern elevation, thank you, is unchanged, speaking about the structure. The west and the north and the south are unchanged as to the structure itself. An existing deck is being removed, the chimney is being removed, so there's a reduction, frankly. And there are some alterations on the pool side of the structure, primarily, you'll see on the elevation, windows and doors for the pool. The clapboard, the existing clapboard, is going to be replaced to refreshen the house appearance. As you know, and as was commented on by many neighbors, the existing structure has a single-car garage with a double-wide driveway. We are shaving off the excess driveway, leaving a single-car lane that obviates some of the concern about, is it going to be used for parking? We're removing the invitation. And the area that is going to be shaved off, carved off, is going to be grassed and landscaped. So you'll see, ultimately, from Mr. Nault's drawings, which we've colored in for you, that the aesthetic appeal of the property is going to be significantly greener on Halleck Street and not offensive to the neighborhood, very much in keeping with the neighborhood. Additionally, we've taken the fence that by code and by privacy and by security surrounds the pool and moved it back. That was a complaint. It was sort of even with or toward the front, meeting the house. It is now simply enclosing the pool. Moving that fence, again, articulates the front of the house in its existing presentation and eliminates 1,326 square feet from the interior pool area, which is also a means of reducing occupancy. I've appended to this letter, and we're going to walk through the exhibits when we get there, the draft rules associated with the use of the pool and the pool house. And those rules strictly prohibit weddings, graduation parties, birthday parties, bar mitzvahs, the various special event functions that were called out by the neighborhood as being a source of concentration of people and potential noise, those are not permitted in the clubhouse. And now, should your next question be, well, how is that enforced? The clubhouse is available to all owners or tenants and their guests at 66 High Street, but any interest in reserving space would have to go through the association, who would enforce this strict, you can't do that here policy. So that is among the rules that we've provided. The rules also include a limitation on the number of guests, that a single unit owner may only have up to four guests at any time. That's also enforced through the association. And let me say, because there was a concern about access, and I discussed with you last time that it's card access, there is an on-site maintenance person at all times, 24/7. And every time the card entry is used, he receives a ping. So when people use that entry, he will know that people are using that entry, and he will circulate periodically to see what is transpiring on the property and to make sure that all the rules are being observed. There are no pets, alcohol, glassware. Item 10. And other. Yes, I've labeled them draft because they have to be adopted into the governing documents of the association. But having said that, they can be conditions of approval. I beg your pardon?
But they're not representable yet unless they're conditions of approval.
Well, there's no pool,
Yeah,
so
that's true.
yes.
That's a
So
good point.
it's all academic
no-
at this
that's
point,
right.
yes. But I appreciate your
That's
question.
right, they don't exist.
And certainly hours of operation, the restriction on use, all of that are appropriate. All of that is an appropriate area of conditions of approval for a special exception. Okay, so I think that that is the subject matter that I've captured in item A in response to that first criterion under your special permit. The second element is that the nature and location of the use in the building will be adequate for fire protection purposes. And we submit that this is an existing structure to which no material change is being made. Nothing is happening on the road that's going to occasion an inability of fire protection. There was a lot of speculation about traffic associated with the pool and the clubhouse and concern about on-street parking. But there's no factual basis for that concern. I have indicated in my letter that every unit on the 66 High Street property has 2 parking spaces. And I put in my letter that there are 15 visiting parking spaces. I've corrected in my conversation with Mr. Nault, there are actually 18 unassigned spaces. And the unit owners will be advised to inform their guests to use on-site parking. Yes,
Visitors parking spaces?
there are 18 unassigned spaces, correct.
And how many units are there?
Currently 27-ish? 57 total, but only
How
20.
many will there be when the complex is completed?
How many?
Only 57 units?
Correct.
So if only 1 in 3 can have, 1 in 4 can have guests at a time? Or else the parking would be overwhelmed?
Well, Commissioner, you've approved this project, so that's academic, because if I'm going to have an event in my unit, but I have to say, in the ebb and flow of life, that is an issue about one can speculate, but is not really evidentiary.
They each have 2 assigned spaces?
Correct.
So
There are
there-
2 assigned spaces and 18 extras.
So there are 114 spaces that are assigned and, or that's close.
Must be. Well, actually, in addition, there's garages in addition to that are for sale for additional spaces, and there's 14 garages. So there's
So-
even more parking.
An individual who gets a unit will automatically get 2 assigned spaces, and then they have the option of also purchasing a garage if they
There's,
so
I think,
choose.
5 extra garages available, so yes, some are assigned garages, and some additional garages are available for purchase.
Some of the garages are directly associated with a certain
Assigned
unit.
unit. Like in the old building where there wasn't availability to have a garage attached to the UTC. The mill building.
So between the access to the pool being controlled by key card access, the rule that one must be accompanied by a unit owner to access the pool and or the clubhouse, and the security on-site maintenance person who's there 24/7 and is pinged every time there's entry to a gate or a door. Those are elements that are responsive to the neighbors' concerns, and certainly fire protection is not implicated. Now, the commission asked the zoning enforcement officer to reach out to the fire department, and this might be an auspicious time for her to.
I did. I spoke with our fire chief, Charles Hershaft, this afternoon, and he had just finished watching the last Planning and Zoning Commission meeting where this application was discussed. And he said they have never had a problem getting fire apparatus down High Street, even if cars were parked on the street.
On High Street.
Yes.
What about this street? This is on Halleck, isn't it?
It's at the intersection of Norton and Halleck.
Yeah.
Or, I'm sorry, High Street and Halleck.
Yeah. Okay.
So he said he has, and he listened to he was watching the tape, and he said he saw that a question came up, and they have never had a problem getting their equipment down there.
Okay, thank you.
And you need more detail on that, let's get it for the next meeting. So, item C, the streets serving the proposed use are adequate, and to carry prospective traffic, and provision is made for entering, leaving the property, that no undue traffic hazard or congestion will be created. And again, there was a high degree of speculation about extraordinary volumes of people using the pool or clubhouse. The rule restricting the use of the pool and clubhouse not for events is responsive to this. And further, we have calculations which were requested by the commission about occupancy loads in the building. And based on an analysis under building and fire safety codes, which are the index for such occupancy, the house has a maximum, or the sitting area has a maximum of 35 people, and the small recess where a bit of fitness equipment will be has a maximum occupancy of 7. There's a total occupancy of 42 people in the structure, potentially. However, given that part of the recess is for fitness equipment, as I said last time, it's not appointed for functions. It's appointed to serve the pool and means of an amenity for exercise for the association members. Neither traffic nor congestion. There's sort of 3 neighbors of vehicular concern in special permits: traffic, congestion, and parking. There's even if somebody came to use the pool, it is not going to the numbers are not going to so increase as to be any different than any member of the neighborhood entertaining, having a Christmas dinner. Maybe 6 people are having Christmas dinners. I'm guessing there are periods of time when there are people actually parking on those streets because people are living their lives. So I think that there does need to be a sense of proportion about this. There's also not a congestion issue because there are not numbers. And there's also not a parking issue because of the number of parking spaces that are available on site and the likelihood of intensity of use being so diminished by the unavailability of functions. This is a place to come to exercise. Item D, the lot in which the use is to be established is of sufficient size and dimensions to permit conduct of the use. So, as I said last time, the proposed use falls within all bulk and setback regulations in your regulations. There is no expansion of the proposed footprint of the existing house. The pool complies with all setback requirements and represents a conventional residential amenity. Eric Glidden, certified residential real estate appraisal, gave you a letter opinion on August 2nd based on his review of the property, the neighborhood, the application, and other private and public documents, in which he concluded that the pool and clubhouse will not adversely affect property values. He has also provided for you this evening, and I've appended to this letter at item 3, although I'm not tabbed, but if you want to jump back there with me. The first item is this location map. This is created through the multiple listing service, and it shows recent sales within a 1 mile radius of the subject property, and these sales and a couple of listings all have in-ground swimming pools because it is a conventional residential amenity. On the next page, I've collected for each of the properties identified on the map their assessed value by the town of Guilford, their appraisal value by the town of Guilford, extrapolating up from the 70% assessed value, and their actual sale value in the case of the ones that have closed, and their listing price in the case of those that remain on the market. Everything sold comfortably above the appraised value by the town of Guilford. And this is not an exhaustive list of properties within a 1 mile radius of the subject that have swimming pools. These are just the properties that sold recently. And Mr. Glidden's current license is attached behind that.
With these sale values and listing values, are you saying that properties with pools sell for more than they're typically appraised at by the town of Guilford?
No, I'm simply establishing two things. One is that it is not so unique to have a swimming pool. And number two, rather in support of Mr. Glidden's conclusion that values appear to be fine.
Values of what?
These sales.
The values of the properties around these properties, or these properties themselves?
We can't make any conclusion about values of properties around these properties, primarily to show you, because it was, and you'll see in some of the exhibits from last time, that this is alleged to be a really unique sort of thing to do to a backyard, and it's not.
Right, and this first map does show that. I mean, it's pretty
Yes.
common to have a pool in the backyard.
Yes.
But I'm just confused about, are you saying that this property will not
This is
lower-
anecdotal. Mr.
Right.
Glidden said that. Mr. Glidden said that.
Do you think it's unlikely that this property will lower surrounding property values?
That is what Mr. Glidden, the certified real estate appraiser, said.
And he showed, but he didn't show that with this appraisal, this
No, he
sale
supplied
list.
this information to us in the ensuing 2 weeks.
But he's showing that somewhere else. Is he showing that somewhere else, or?
No, he has his opinion, and he should be in the room, and if he's not in the room right now, he'll be in the room shortly. You can ask him yourself.
Okay.
Okay. Architectural design. It's staying the way it is. New clapboards. The driveway's being cut down. That's a net positive. Additional green planting, net positive. Moving the proposed fence back so that it's not eclipsing any front elevation of the house, that's net positive. So architectural design, unchanged, remains an element of the existing streetscape and does not conflict with the architectural design and style of adjacent properties. And so to summarize, an in-ground pool, fenced for safety and privacy reasons, is proposed on an existing residential property. Aesthetic improvements will be uplifting to the neighborhood and are in compliance with the standards of the regulations. Now on my next page, page 4, I discussed some of the exhibits that Mr. Cretella, Attorney Cretella, provided in support of his argument on behalf of some neighbors. And the first item that I've included, and I didn't include just the photographs because the photographs rather speak for themselves. But Exhibit C was a copy of the minutes of the February 18th, 2018 meeting of this commission at which you approved 66 High Street. And he claimed that seeking this approval was undermine the spirit of the approval pursuant to which this commission acted. And I pored over those minutes to try to understand from where he derived that argument. And I can only infer that his suggestion that this undermines the spirit of the original approval appears to rely on a single question and answer, whether in the midst of questions about age restriction and rentals, if there was room for further expansion. And this question was a question about unit count, density, and site development. And the response was that there was no additional space on the site for such additional development. That exchange does not preclude the request that's before you or foreclose the commission from approving it on a finding that it complies otherwise with your regulation. The next exhibit I discuss is Exhibit F. Attorney Cretella, appended 3 New Haven Register articles recounting the vociferous neighborhood opposition to the Woodbridge Jewish Community Center's request to have longer camp pool hours, to include weekends and memberships for approximately 50 families who, quote, can't afford traditional full-timer pool club membership. It's not a valid comparison. I said that last time. I say it with some emphasis tonight. According to the cover letter submitted on behalf of the JCC when it sought that expansion, and I've appended that letter to my letter as item 4, the JCC has about 6,000 members. Quote, the JCC is a dynamic institution which provides a wide array of programming to our many constituencies. In its letter, the JCC cites its goal to maximize potential revenue streams in order to remain a viable institution. The JCC is a large community membership organization with innumerable, if you visit their website, innumerable programmatic attractions to engage and sustain its members. This is a backyard swimming pool, offering an exercise amenity for the residents at 66 High. Critically, the pool at the Jewish Center, the outside pool, has a dimension of 55 by 75, 4,125 square feet of pool. 5 of the proposed pools could fit in the JCC pool. And I've appended, and Mr. Nault will show you a larger example of it, because he prepared the exhibit. I think it's item 7. A comparative drawing showing the pool at Halleck Street, the Vista Valley Pool, which I'll be discussing next, which was another exhibit to Attorney Cretella's letter, And then finally, in hashed outline, the JCC pool. And if you look at them, here's the proposed pool, here's Vista Valley, here's the JCC weighing in at 5 times the size of the proposed pool. It is not a valid comparator. A condominium association swimming pool may not legitimately be compared to a 6,000-member recreational opportunity. The third item I discuss is Attorney Critella's Exhibit G, a noise study for the Vista Village Country Club in San Diego, California. This raised great interest among the commission. But as I indicated that evening on only cursory review of the offering, by scale alone, which is embedded on page 1 of that report, there's no comparison between Valley Vista, Vista Village, and the subject pool request. The pool was one of several country club amenities that were included in a proposal that gave rise to the noise study, all at a scale that eclipses what is before the commission. The California pool, as is shown on Exhibit 7, Item 7, 3,400 square feet. The subject is 800 square feet. Vista Valley, 4 times the size of the pool that's proposed. But this is critical because this was a question by a commissioner. According to the study, the California pool employs 2 15-horsepower pumps. 2 15-horsepower pumps. The proposed pool uses a single 2-horsepower pump. Now, the California proposal was approved. You read through that big study, you get to a place where the noise that's produced by those 2 15-horsepower pumps met the noise, the decibel standard in San Diego, which was very similar to Guilford's. But so does the 2-horsepower pump proposed. And I've attached as item 5 in your letter, but will give you to the record the entire spec sheet, manufacturer information demonstrating that the decibel level for the 2-horsepower pump proposed is 45 dBA. That meets not only the daytime, but the nighttime standard in the town of Guilford. But we listened to the neighborhood. And even though the pump associated with this proposed pool falls within the parameters of the Guilford Noise Ordinance, it is going to be located in the structure, in a soundproof enclosure. It is going to be located in the structure in a noise-proof enclosure, further reducing sound emissions. So as a result, and contrary to council's assertions, the application does meet the requirements of the Guilford Noise Ordinance. Attorney Cretella summarized his concerns in 4 points, none of which undermines the application's satisfaction of the special permit criteria. His 4 concerns were appearance, noise, property values, and parking. I've described the changes, and Mr. Nault will show you the changes to the site plan, which are responsive to the neighbors' concerns, which preserve the facade as you approach, improve the front yard, and move back the fence to really pay attention to what the neighborhood talked about. The streetscape will be enhanced by this proposal. With respect to noise, which I've pretty much covered, queried by the commissioners, Attorney Cretella did not know whether the noise study he presented was certified. While he claimed that the proposed pool pump will exceed the noise ordinance, he offered no factual basis for that conclusion, which is untrue and controverted by the evidence I've just presented. He was asked whether the size and the noise of the pump in the Vista Valley study was similar to the proposed pump. He did not know. So the Vista Village Country Club pool, a 3,400 square foot pool using two 15 horsepower pumps against the proposed single 2 horsepower pump for an 800 square foot pool, there's simply nothing probative about the California study. Sir.
I'm sorry to keep interrupting. The structure that's going to be soundproof, it's a structure. Does it not need a permit? Doesn't have to be on the plan, or is it just a little box? Or do you have any idea what this
Mr.
might
Nault can describe that to you because he's the engineer,
Yeah.
just the lawyer. But it'll be in the area that is now serving as the garage, I believe. With respect to the claim about property value, no evidence was provided by Attorney Cretella. And parking, while he expressed the same speculative angst that the neighborhood did, and, he and his clients referred to a single fundraiser which did occur at the 66 High Street property during the year prior to our visit with you this evening. And it was a cancer fundraiser. They raised $25,000, and it was a one-off event. And I say with certitude that it has no correlative impact or scale related to this pool. Then another exhibit, or two other exhibits that you received, were from relatives of Ms. Major. They are current real estate brokers in Florida and Fairfield County, one of whom was formerly an appraiser until 2000. And Mr. Cerrone's letter, he is the former real estate appraiser, is predicated on erroneous assumptions. He refers to the pool as non-conforming and out of character. But I have established, and even one of your commissioners has conceded, backyard swimming pools are neither non-conforming nor out of character. From a safety perspective, fencing and protected entry are security features, as is the fact that the on-site maintenance person is pinged every time somebody goes in. His suggestion of raised noise levels is a speculative statement, which does not in and of itself negate appropriateness of the proposed use or violation of any applicable standard. He paired that concern with speculation about artificial lighting. So there was this whole body of information that assumes that there will be large gatherings, which we've already indicated you may condition as not occurring, and which we are adopting by rule as to not be permitted to occur. And with respect to lighting, Mr. Nault will show you a picture of and a spec sheet for the 42-ish inch bollard, which constitutes the backyard lighting, enclosed by the 6-foot fence. And those lights can be turned off at 9 o'clock when the cessation of the day for the pool and clubhouse occurs. His concern about food, pesticides, and odor failed to take account of on-site property management, failed to take account of the limitations that are being placed on use, and all of that. And the issue of flood concerns is addressed by applicable codes that govern construction of pools in such circumstances. Mr. Nault can talk to you about this if you'd like. In summary, the concerns upon which he based his conclusions are baseless and contradicted by the evidence. Similarly, Ms. Cerrone's letter recounted essentially the same concerns as Mr. Cerrone without detail or facts, and I note that she is not nor discloses at any time having been a real estate appraiser. We have given you the opinion of a certified real estate appraiser. There is an online petition of individuals supporting the pool installation. I've given you the website address. I printed it out and with apologies neglected to add it to my folder. So assuming this hearing remains open, I will fax it. Oh, look at you have it. God bless you. Thank you so much. I submit for the record, it's contained this morning. 57 Guilford residents in favor of pursuing. Now, I want to say with some emphasis that the fact that there are members of the public on both sides of the issue is not a valid substitute for the direct question before this commission, which is whether the application complies with the standards for issuance of a special permit under your regulations. And we are submitting to you, and based on the evidence we are providing to you, that it does. So we are urging its approval. Now let's just run quickly through what's appended. Item number 1, current and proposed elevations. Mr. Nault will show you that. Item number 2, those draft pool and clubhouse rules. Item number 3, the sales and listings with pools within 1 mile of the subject, as well as Mr. Glidden's license. Item 4, the JCC cover letter. Item 5, the pool pump specification. Item 6, the Villa Vista approval excerpt. I found a newspaper article that described the approval of the application to which the noise study relates, and which talked about in more detail the 3,400 square feet of dimension for that pool. Then item 7, the pool size comparison, which Mr. Nault will also show you in large scale. And I've also included the Home Builders Coastal Guide, and that is responsive to an email that Mr. Johnson, Commissioner Johnson, sent in between the last hearing and this one, raising a concern about the substantial improvement rule. And given the limited alterations that are occurring to the house, clapboard and some changes on the west side, and Mr. Nault can speak to this too, there is no, not even an approach to the 50% rule.
Can I ask then, do you have a budget for the project?
Well,
And what's
I don't know the answer to that, but and Mr. Nault may know the answer to that, but let me go back to your email. Because we are here seeking this special permit based on our, the applicant is a developer. The applicant understands.
A great idea what the cost of the project would be then, right?
I beg your pardon?
They should know pretty close.
But it's not really your issue, respectfully, because without changes to the property that trigger the substantial improvement rule, you have what you see. You get what you have. No alteration. And if there were alteration, and I saw the exchange between you and the zoning enforcement officer, there is no license associated with getting a special permit to make unfettered changes to properties. What you approve is what can be. If they were, as you posited, to demolish the building and build whatever they want, they'd have to come back here to get permission to do that. So you have taken on a subject that is enforced elsewhere by the town of Guilford, that we are representing to you will fall within the honor the substantial improvement rule. We have about $45,000 before that threshold is reached, based on the value assessed by the town, or the value appraised by the town.
Council, the reason that he's asking that is because we've been hurt before.
I understand.
As it were, because we have had other applicants that have come before us with applications like this, and they've blown past the 50% rule on sort of a grand and epic scale, and they've actually been through any number of fines since then, but they've been supported by.
I appreciate that you have anecdotal information, but that does not.
Yeah, so that's why he's asking
or an
on
actual
this
experience,
instance,
but
yeah.
it still doesn't pull it within the ambit of your regulations. And we have an individual who has an ongoing construction project and who understands the process. So,
But if the 50% rule is triggered, you'll have to come back to us with a different kind of project.
if there were any changes that were necessitated, we would absolutely be back. This,
We
the
wouldn't
name of the
necessarily
case.
be notified if any changes were necessary. That's sort of the,
If there were changes that were necessary, you would be back before the commission. The case is a NATRA, and it stands for the proposition that you get the relief that you ask for. And if we can't do it with the relief that we ask for, then we have to come back and ask for something else. That's what the law says.
well,
I
Well,
understand that
I don't
you're
want to bring up
trying
the
to
Anatra
put my
case.
client
That's
in a basket with somebody else,
No,
and
no,
I'm
I know.
suggesting it's not appropriate
no,
to do so.
I don't actually, I mean, I don't foresee the 50% rule actually being necessarily triggered in this case.
Yeah, it's really
although
modest
the-
improvements.
The Anatra case, I don't know. I don't know if we want to put the ladies and gentlemen in the audience through a 3-hour seminar on the
I'm just
Anatra
saying-
experience.
I'm just saying that I don't just say this lightly. I say it because it's what the law provides.
I just wanted to ask you very briefly, what
Yeah.
is our standard for approval of this project as an amendment to a special permit, and what is our standard for denial of this as an amendment to a special permit?
Well, the standard for approval is the meeting of the criteria for, which are enumerated A through E, section 27399. If you're going to deny it, you better have concrete evidence that undermines the evidence that's been provided.
Well,
And at this juncture, there is none.
So the standard for denial is you better have concrete evidence.
Oh, there has to be substantial evidence to support you. And far be it from me to take you through another legal precedent.
Well, no, I mean, this is because our standard for denial when it comes to special permits, as well as our standard for approval, there's a lot of breadth between those two things, right?
There
You
has to
mentioned the
be
standard.
substantial evidence, and substantial evidence is not speculation. The substantial evidence is not an expression of concern or what if. A substantial evidence is demonstrable evidence. And there is a case, Cambodian Buddhist Association of Newtown, which is a very important special exception case. And I reviewed it with specific interest about how it handles the parking and traffic issue, because that is of some concern to this neighborhood and possibly to the commission. And what that case says, among other things, and it's like a 30-page long case, so it's one of those dense guys, is that in order to find that a special permit can be denied on traffic grounds, there has to be a significant increase of traffic associated than would be available to another permitted use in the zoning district. Now I notice, let me grab table 4, that permitted in the R1 zoning district are buildings, uses, and facilities of the town of Guilford. And let me put that in the record. The occasional appearance of a car parked on Halleck Street, or 2 cars parked on Halleck Street, which we still submit, is the unusual event because there are 18 spaces and 5 garages that are available on site that could be arranged for temporary use, I'm sure, as to the 5 garages, if it were necessary or desirable, are certainly not any more or substantially significantly different than if you had some town use or facility here. So you are constrained, and you need evidence. And it's got to be evidence of a significant scale. Now, I've got a pool that'll be open 3 months. I've got a pool house that's constrained by use to not have gatherings. So that's what's being requested.
Please do.
We got 57 names here.
I beg your pardon, could you
I'm
speak
sorry,
up?
I'm a little hoarse. I said, we got 57 names here, and there's really no addresses other than, let's see, Warsaw, Poland, United Kingdom.
Sir, I said there were 57 from Guilford. there's 67 or so names
But
signed there.
But there are no addresses here. I mean, from Guilford, where in Guilford are the people that...
Well,
are-
I'll tell you what.
Well, let me finish.
Well,
The people that are important are the people that are living in this area, not Wausau, or not the United Kingdom, or South Carolina, or Mississippi. So if you're going to, this thing is invalid as far as I can see. You should have an address on here so we can make a judgment as a committee here as to whether it is valid that
we'll
these
get
people
you
want.
addresses, sir. But I have to say that to pit residents of Guilford against residents of Guilford is not really germane to the issue before this commission. The issue before this commission are the standards and your regulations. And, you know, listening to the tittering in the audience, I want to say something about civility, and I want to say something about how at the last meeting, in a total departure from the decorum that is appropriate in these kinds of proceedings, the integrity of my appraiser was impugned by a member of the public, and my integrity was impugned by a member of the public.
Here, Mr. Glidden has also provided a map of properties within 1 mile of the subject of property showing recent sales and listings of property that have been in-ground pools, attached to number 3. The sales and final prices are higher than the appraised prices respectively in the town of Guilford. Now, Mr. Glidden here, did he go to a place where it was a pool for a group of people, or was it a house? So if it's a house, it would be a smaller pool, and that would make the price higher. This is not the case. This is something for a whole group of 125 people. This comparison is not fair.
Well, I would go a step further, Counselor. This comparison is talking about the value of the property involved, not the surrounding neighbors that we're concerned about is going to devalue the
You have
properties.
Mr. Glidden's opinion on that. But with respect to your comment, Mr. Brown, and pardon me if I detect a note of hostility in it, the idea that this is other than single-family residences, which happen to be arranged vertically and horizontally, and that more than 6 people, or perhaps their 50 friends who come to use the hot tub in the fire pit just down the street, it's no different, because you're assuming that people are going to assemble like the stateroom scene at Night of the Opera and the Marx Brothers. That's not how these things work. In fact, let me reference that I think it was Ms. Major provided in her exhibits at the last hearing 3 photographs of swimming pools at condominium associations that she exhorted were within the body of the developments. If you look at those pictures where the greenery is fully leafed out, in not one of those 3 pictures is there a human being, because that is indicative that these are not used like the JCC summer camp. I want to get up in the morning and do some laps. That's what I'm going to do. If I see that there are 4 people there already, I'm going to turn around and come back later. It's not a gathering place. Yes, people may gather, but it's not a generator of noise and activity. It is no different. The building code, zoning, treat condominiums as single-family residences.
Nothing to do with what I was talking about. What I was talking about, what Mr. Glidden said here.
Well,
And it
please,
sounds like he's gone, I'm not being hostile. It sounds like he went around and checked houses and saw that the prices that the houses with pools sold for more money.
no,
And that
he
would make
worked-
sense.
He worked off of the
I
multiple
can't even
listing
finish.
service. He
I
worked
love
off of
people
the
who interrupt
multiple
me.
listing service, which an appraiser has access to, and collected the pools within recent date, within 1 mile, that had pools. Don't hold him responsible for that collection of numbers. I created that simply to illustrate that those sales were robust. That's not the point. The point is Mr. Glidden's appraisal opinion. You got it at the meeting at the last hearing. Please review it if you have any questions, and if he's not here, there he is. If you want to question him, question him.
Well, you just heard
Unlike
my-
the other 2 who submitted letters, he is in the room.
I just got through saying that this thing, I'm not talking about noise levels and all the things you just went on rapping out about. I'm talking about the situation that this is showing. It sounds like he went around to houses, and he's making an assumption here that the houses sold for a higher value, and I'm sure they did. But this is not the situation we have right here.
Well, you'll talk to Mr. Glidden then. And it's fairly dismissive to refer to my commentary as the stuff I just talked about. Be that as it may, there is one final unpleasantry to deal with. And that tracks on to the incivility that I was referring to before Mr. Brown asked his question. And that's the email chain from Commissioner Meyer between the two hearings, in which you incorrectly suggested that the letters from Ms. Major had not been included in the materials that Lisa had sent to you, because they were. I saw that in the email change. And you also, fairly outrageously, accused Mr. Glidden of trying to abscond with those materials and of me of trying to hide them. And as I've illustrated, those letters advance the discussion here in our favor. So aside from the fact that we are both bound from ethical codes, it is inappropriate to make this ad hominem. It was ad hominem by the public last time. It's become ad hominem.
What does that mean, ad hominem?
You're attacking us. The subject matter is the application.
Yes, Counselor, the subject matter is the application.
But you have impugned us, and I think it really is defamatory.
Counselor, I can assure you, we will make our decision based on the merits of the information provided, as we always do. There are no questions as to the ethics of the member of this commission, and I'm a little bit upset that you would bring that into question. We follow the rules and we follow the law. We always have and we always will. And any other implication by you is inflammatory.
Well, you are the one who defamed us, and it's in the record. So we'll leave it at that, respectfully.
Thank you.
So at this point, Mr. Nault still wants to show you things.
Yeah, why don't we move on to that? Yes.
Okay.
That's, thank you. He's the one to ask, actually.
I'm submitting one neighbor letter in favor of the
Thank you. I hope that we can catch our breath here. I am Ronald Nault, professional engineer from Luke's Consulting Engineers, and I'll be submitting a revised site plan to you, as well as the manufacturer's spec for the lighting bollard that'll be used around the pool deck. If I could just pass these out. Okay, thank you. What I'm going to show you before you tonight, on the bottom is the previous site plan as presented at the August 2nd public information meeting, public hearing, and at the top is the current site plan that's submitted to you tonight. By way of orientation, running north-south, Norton Avenue, east-west at the intersection to the common right-of-way. This is the back portion of the High Street project here, and this is the house, the current house at 25 Halleck Street, outlined in red and oriented similarly on both plans. The proposed pool outlined in blue. The major difference from the previous public hearing, Previously, the fence was brought to the front to completely enclose the house and pool. Under that scenario, currently, we've pulled the fence back to the back corners of the house, leaving the front view off of Halleck Street largely unchanged from its current condition. And we colored a plan, green representing lawn or landscaping, to show how that changed the view from the Halleck Street, Norton Avenue intersection. Again, the previous plan here with fencing all the way up to the front would show a house with a fence pulled tight to its corners and not as much lawn. The current proposal with the fence pulled back to the back corners of the house, really just enclosing the pool and patio area, leaving the front view of the house largely unchanged from its current. And while I'm at it, by way of architectural, on the bottom view is the existing elevation views of the structure at 25 Halleck Street, and at the top is the proposed view at 25 Halleck Street. As Attorney Shansky had mentioned, redoing the clapboards, maintaining the exact limits of the property, limits of the structure, except along the back pool side, addition of removal of the deck and addition of French doors along that side. But from the view from Halleck Street and the common driveway, completely unchanged in terms of its residential aesthetic. Minor renovations to the exterior structure by way of removing bay windows and placing French doors, etc. And as referenced at the last meeting, we also pulled back the driveway. The existing driveway at Halleck Street was wide enough for 2 cars. We've pulled that back to 1 car and we'll restore that area to lawn. The only parking space provided is for handicapped accessibility to serve a handicapped person from the remote portions of the project that would have a hard time traversing the site. At that distance, I guess view the Chittenden building in the far distance. The project is intended to be accessed through the 66 High Street property, through a gate and walkway into the fenced area to use the pool. I guess as your needs would warrant, swim, only entering the clubhouse if you needed bathroom, changing room facilities as well. So it's really intended as an amenity to the 66 High Street project. The pool scale is 20 by 40, a residential pool scale similar to many or smaller than many in-ground pools here in Guilford. And by scale comparison, this is the proposed pool site for Halleck Street. This is the JCC pool, and this is the pool that was the subject of the noise study. I wish I lived in San Diego. As I mentioned, the lighting standard, the pool area will be illuminated by 42-inch high bollards, common walkway lighting. They are completely downlighted, night sky compliant. They throw their light at 90 degrees and down, nothing going vertical, upwards. They produce, the design element would be production of a low lighting level for safety walking along the perimeter of the pool, at the times that even that the pool would need to be lighted. 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. summertime really leaves very little need for light overall. The facility will be closed at 9 p.m. The lights will go off. We're talking on the order of 1-foot candle lighting levels for a pedestrian area, much less than the Walmart parking lot, for instance. The
Question for you.
Sure.
If we were to approve this, I would assume from what you and Attorney Shansky have been saying that this is going to be used for 3 months out of the year. You would have no problem with us making a condition of approval that it can only be used for 3 months out of the year, based on what you're saying.
I'm thinking warm weather. The 3 months, I'm thinking Memorial Day to Labor Day is generally the time
One of my
frame.
questions in the last meeting
Right.
was how long it would
The
be used.
pool will be open for approximately 3 months, depending on climate change and when that season begins and ends. And the clubhouse will be available year-round. There will be some fitness equipment in it, but,
So
yeah.
you would probably like the back area where the entrance is from the parking lot of the condominiums, and you'd have to light a pathway or something to get up to the clubhouse. So in fact, those lights will be used until 9 o'clock all through the year. Am I right?
That is likely the case. They are 42 inches high. The fence is 6 feet high.
Also, a question was raised earlier regarding the pool and filter. That will be placed inside what's the existing garage structure of the building. In and of itself, inherently, 45 decibels or below, when placed in the garage, almost completely noiseless. Let's see, I'm not sure if you had any other questions on the civil engineering side now, or we can...
I just have one other question, and it has to do with the appearance of the property from outside, because that's critical to this. And you have a handicapped space. I look on the spot here, on the drawing, and I'm assuming you're going to have a Hoyer lift to help them get in and out of the pool?
I'm going to say yes.
Yeah.
We haven't gotten that far. We're seeking approval of the overall concept.
I'm sorry?
Yeah, that's not going to be.
Okay.
There's a plate in the middle of I'm calling it the backyard, the yard. I guess west of the house, right? There's a plate at latitude 41.2770, longitude negative 72.68152. It's a little metal plate in the center of the yard. Wondering how the installation of the pool affects the underground structures or power or water arrangements that currently exist for the home.
With approval, we will be revising the on-site septic system to be fully compliant with that standard distance away from the pool, moving this septic system away from the marsh, which probably it should have belonged in the first place, as well. So any utilities, all modifications will be designed to meet public health code.
And in the case of the septic, that's going to mean sort of the northeast corner of the property is going to be the septic.
Correct. And we've corresponded with Dennis Johnson, and he's been part of the discussion. He knows the soils in the area, and we would be submitting a site plan for his approval.
And the western side of the property, the green line there, there's currently a fence that is, I think, 6 feet tall right now.
Yes.
That is the fence that we're talking about in the new project as well, in the same location. It's not moving like west or east 4 feet or something, or
That's correct. We'd be using the fence that met with the standards of the Historic District Commission to create uniformity. I've brought along a picture, and I'll submit. So we'll be using that cedar fence with landscaping to match the 66 High Street standard as well, along, this view and this view here. So it'll be the same fence.
And although you're meeting the standards of the Historic District Commission because you're keeping the fence more or less the same as the rest of the fence, this property is not subject to Historic District review, right?
That's right.
More questions for our engineer?
For the commissioners not in the room, on August 2nd, there's a letter from Dennis Johnson in the file. And for the record, I have a copy of Connecticut General Statute 7-147A, which is the jurisdictional remit of a historic district commission, which relates only to buildings within historic districts.
That's it? Oh, he's good. For the moment.
Unless your questions, Mr. Clinton.
You're good? Okay. So, that said, I'm sure there's an attorney in the audience that would like to speak. Stage is yours. Mr. Attorney Cretella.
My name is Mike Cretella. I'm a lawyer at Brenner, Saltzman, Wallman in New Haven. I represent Stan and Arlene Minjone of 20 Halleck Street. For those commission members who weren't here the last time, I'm not going to repeat a lot of what I went over. It was a very long hearing, but I would like to respond to a few of the points that were raised by Attorney Shansky this evening. The first is we heard repeated concerns about the lack of evidence presented, and Attorney Shansky referred to the testimony that you heard from the neighbors as mere speculation. I take issue with that. Testimony from neighbors about things they see and observe is evidence, and it is sufficient evidence for this commission to base a decision on. Attorney Shansky referenced that Cambodian Buddhist Society Supreme Court case, and I just want to read a quote from that case where it says, "The commission may rely on statements of neighborhood residents about the nature of existing roads in the area and existing volume of traffic and its own knowledge of these conditions." That's from the Supreme Court. So that, with that in mind, I want to first talk about the traffic. At the last hearing, there was testimony from Tom Floyd, who lives on High Street, and I believe this is the confusion Ms. Reeves had. He was recalling an incident that occurred on the corner of Norton and Halleck, not an incident that occurred on High. And I actually have the police report of that incident where the fire truck got in an accident with another car in an effort to clear the way for an ambulance that was trying to get to his, I believe it was his father, who had collapsed and I believe ultimately died in the driveway of the single-bedroom house that's exactly on the corner of Halleck and Norton, which is directly across the street from this property. So I'll pass this out to the commission.
Thank you. Thank you, Counselor.
And as you can see from the police report, the date was March 24th, 2017. And on the second page of the police report, it shows 59 Norton Avenue, which is the property directly across the street from 25 Halleck Street. And it describes the inability of the fire truck, ambulance, and a single vehicle to navigate that corner without incident under those emergency circumstances. would like to submit for the record certain photographs that we've taken of these particular these streets. The first one I'm showing you is what Norton Avenue looks like looking east. And this is from the, taken from, I believe, the area of the right-of-way. And you can see with two cars parked, there is, and this is the right-of-way that the applicant has posted to the commission is completely unrestricted in every way and for every use possible.
Counselor?
Yes.
Can you interpret what that means to me? If it can be used for any reason at all, and someone wants to use the pool and they park there, that's not under the jurisdiction of the association to say you can't park there. Right? This is open to any legal purpose? Is that the wording of the right-of-way? It is, isn't it? So potentially, people could park there legally.
The interpretation of the scope of a right-of-way is somewhat of a confusing legal issue. The owner of the property over which the right-of-way passes could have a potential civil lawsuit if they think the 66 High Street is exceeding the scope of that. 66 High Street's position is that it's unfettered and unlimited, which in this case would, by implication, include the right to park in it, so long as they don't completely block access from other properties using the right-of-way.
So the position of the applicant is that it's okay? I'm confused.
The applicant told the commission that the right-of-way was unlimited. The applicant also told the commission that no one's going to park in it. But, you know, there's no enforcement mechanisms if people do park in it. That's one of our concerns.
Thank you.
Council for 66 High just respond to that briefly. I don't know.
Thank you.
I'm not sure, just because I'm confused about this right away as well. I'm also going to ask both of you who actually owns Norton Town Road. Norton Avenue. Sorry.
First the response.
Yeah, but first
Thank
the
you.
response.
I put into the record on August 2nd a copy of the easement language, the recorded easement language, and while I'd have to refer to the tape to see if I said unfettered or unlimited, what I recall saying is that it is among the broadest language available in an easement, and you're nodding in agreement because that's the gist of it. I don't stand here to interpret it, nor do I make a representation as to what the underlying fee owner might think is, intensification of the use, or what a court of law would say about that. But for our purposes, for the purposes of this commission, it is a very broad easement.
I'm sorry to keep hammering at one thing, but within the law and subject to no enforcement by the police department, there is no parking signs anywhere on these streets. So legally, anyone could park on those
Which is
streets.
true about all of the residents on those streets and their guests and friends as well, yes. Now, if that's a concern for you for safety reasons and you think it would be auspicious to put control signs, and you think that that is a corollary to this use,
That would also impact the other neighbors that would lose
Right.
the right to park cars in front of the house, so
But
they would be negatively impacted
that's
by
correct.
that.
But that would go, again, to the notion that the usage of the pool house and the pool are not controlled by time and intensity, which they are. But I don't want to use that.
I would just like to know who actually owns the road.
I believe the
really
owner of the
curious.
property is at Maureen Perkins? Oh, no?
It seems as though,
Yeah.
from my last review, it seemed as though, and I'm pretty confident that I'm wrong, that these properties just go straight up to the subject property in some cases.
Correct.
Is that the
This,
case?
I believe, You
It's
can
not the
speak up
case.
as soon as you know the answer, right?
We need name and address, though,
Who
please.
owns the right of way?
Barbara Major, 62 Norton Avenue, Ogden.
And so Barbara Major's property is here, and her property goes up to the property line, and the right-of-way goes across her property.
And as the right-of-way continues, does it become somebody else's?
Yeah, so here's looking down the right-of-way towards the fire department access on 66 High Street. And eventually, at the end of the right-of-way, I believe it turns into that property, I think it's shown on the map here, it's Edwards Perkins. I believe it ends right before there. And this is the location of the accident with the fire truck in that particular picture. And Halleck Street, for its purposes, is also quite narrow. This describes what would happen if two people decided to park on Halleck Street. And this is taken directly in front of 25 Halleck Street, looking up towards High Street. And sorry to overload you with photographs, but the last one is just a perspective on Halleck Street looking down towards the corner of Norton and Halleck. And so these photographs, in addition to the testimony that you heard, and in addition to the police report that you have in front of you, do constitute substantial evidence that potential problems in this area are possible. And we know that they're possible because, as the applicants conceded, on at least one occasion, there's been a large gatherings at 66 High Street where people at 66 High Street utilize these very streets for parking. Despite their assurances that it wouldn't, it has happened. And for your own information, the pictures, there's about 7 to 8 feet between two cars if they're parked on the street. I just want to talk quickly about the noise study I submitted. I felt like I was very clear with the commission that I wasn't submitting it as an example of an equivalent. I was submitting it because it was a publicly available noise study, and if one of the problems is the applicant's reading for what the proposal was. And I wasn't arguing that the proposal was equivalent to this. I was arguing that the measurements they took in deciding whether to do the proposal were something that this commission should look at. And the measurements about the noise from the 20 people in a pool from 30 feet away exceeding Guilford's noise ordinance, that was done in an existing pool somewhere else. And Attorney Shansky also claimed that I represented that the pool filters would not be able to be within the Guilford zoning ordinance, and that these were 15 horsepower filters and those were 2. But at the time, we didn't know what size the filters were. So I did not represent that they would not be able to. I questioned whether they would. And at the same time, I questioned whether having potentially 42 individuals at this pool on a regular basis would be within the noise levels. And as those studies showed, that they were well exceeding Guilford's noise levels. And for reference, in that particular proposal, the pool filters were 162 feet from the property line, and the pool itself was 242 feet from the property line. Whereas in this case, the pool is going to be, I think, 10 or 15 feet from the property line. And it's not the amount of water that makes the noise, it's whether or not there's going to be 20 people in there enjoying a pool. trying to move quickly for you. The property values, I think, is a fundamental issue. I believe the commission's heard plenty of testimony from neighbors who are fearful for their property values. But in addition to the motion, you've heard testimony from people saying, we would not have purchased this property in this neighborhood if this use was here, or if we knew this use was going here. That constitutes evidence. That is evidence of what people actually would do when faced with this. The board can also use its own judgment, and appraisers do this as well, as to ask yourself whether or not a potential buyer with this use next door would pay 100% of value or more than they'd pay without that use next door. And at the chair's suggestion, we commissioned a certified appraiser to give an opinion, and I will submit that for the record. And this opinion is from a Guilford resident who is a certified appraiser, Gloria Gibney, who has lived in Guilford for 40 years. She's personally familiar with the area. She's been a certified appraiser for more than a decade. She's also has real estate experience. You'll see from the letter that her qualifications are laid out. And as I mentioned at the last hearing, the letter from Mr. Glidden was from a certified appraiser, but it was not a certified appraisal. And there's a big difference. And Ms. Gibney goes through some of the factors that are distinguishable. Her ultimate conclusion is that this pool facility would damage this pre-existing residential neighborhood. She thinks Mr. Glidden's letter was, do we need to take a break? Okay. Was not reliable. And the reason why she thought it was not reliable was two things. First, it wasn't done in accordance with the standards for what they're called the Uniform Standards of Professional Appraisal Practice. And those standards require, amongst other things, any sort of opinion as to market value must be supported by analysis of relevant information. Ms. Gibney noted that the report referenced no such analysis. It was, as Attorney Shansky is so afraid of in these hearings, it was mere speculation. Ms. Gibney, while she did not herself do analysis of this, which would require compiling relevant market information, doing a cost basis approach of places that are similar to this with places that are similar but do not have this type of use. It's quite an expensive thing. She was able to provide a general opinion that the neighboring property values will be negatively impacted. And one of the reasons and this is not an appraiser, this is not an appraisal, it's not a certified opinion, it's a general opinion based on her experience, as well as what she calls the common person logic to value. And this standard is something that appraisers use, and as you can see in the letter, to double check their work. They do the numbers, and then they do, okay, what would this do to a common hypothetical buyer? And she writes, the questions she would ask to double check her work is, would you prefer to live immediately next door to this type of community facility? And would you be willing to pay the same price as living in a quiet, 100% single-family home neighborhood setting? And she thought, based on her experience, the answer to that question was no. She also noted a couple faults in what she thought in Mr. Glidden's report. One, he says, and this is something that's come up tonight that I'd like to emphasize, that this proposed use is, quote, common and typical in residential neighborhoods. And I fundamentally disagree, as I said at the last hearing, with that assertion, and so did Ms. Gibney. This proposed use is not equivalent to a single-family pool. I think that is obvious. That is something the board can see. It is in the site plan. It is in the fact that there's 57 or 58 units with a couple residents each, up to 4 guests at a time. This is a use that is way more intensive than any single-family pool in the state. Mr. Glidden also says that he's not aware of any discernible market evidence that the introduction of any Cimarron facilities will have adverse effects upon neighboring values. And you'll see Ms. Gibney says, what does that mean? He doesn't describe any efforts to find empirical evidence of adverse effects on neighboring values. Mr. Glidden's lack of awareness without describing those efforts is not proof that there will be no adverse effects. And finally, Ms. Gibney notes that, in her opinion, after reviewing the application, her familiarity with the site, that Mr. Glidden underestimates the potential intensity of the use in forming his opinions. And this is exemplified in the repeated assumptions that this is just a typical backyard pool, when clearly it is not. Ms. Gibney concludes that Mr. Glidden has not demonstrated that the proposed use of Halleck Street will not impair the value, and she concludes that it most likely will impair the value of neighboring residents. In terms of standard of proof, the applicant is required to prove all of the factors. If there is substantial in the evidence in the record that causes the commission to feel that the applicant has not proved a single one of the factors, then it can deny the special permit. We believe that Ms. Gibney's expert report is substantial evidence. We also believe that the traffic concerns and the evidence we've put in there is also substantial evidence. I just want to ask Stan Minjone to come up. He has a brief something to say in response to something that was said tonight.
Hi, Stan Minjone, 20 Halleck Street. Just at the beginning of Attorney Shansky's dialogue this evening, she had mentioned that our opposition is a difference of opinion. Our opposition is based on the criteria for the special permit, specifically A, the location is not in harmony with the neighborhood. That's what our opposition is based on, not a difference of opinion. Thanks.
Thank you. So if anyone has any questions about the few points that I raised tonight, I'd be happy to answer, or anything else.
Counselor,
Yes.
Based on what Mr. Minjone said, as well as everything that you just mentioned to us, what you're actually telling this commission is that we have substantial evidence for denial, but we also do have adequate grounds for approval at this point under an amendment to a special permit. Isn't that correct?
I don't believe that's correct. I don't believe the applicant has put in any substantial evidence that the traffic will not be affected adversely. There's been a representation from council that people won't park there, but as we know with respect to the fire department lane from the testimony of residents, people do use that lane, people do park on these streets. That's what the evidence in the record is that these residents do use the streets.
Feel that they have to show that traffic will not be affected at all?
The language of section 273-80, I can pull that out. I don't know that it's no effect whatsoever.
Pretty sure they use the word substantially, but I'm
No undue traffic or congestion.
not.
And it's our position, they have not shown that undue traffic will not result. I believe that we've put substantial in the evidence into the record showing that undue traffic will result, and there's nothing to stop it from happening.
How would they go about showing that? How would
Traffic-
they go about carrying that burden?
Ordinarily, the applicants would present a traffic study by a certified traffic engineer.
We get like maybe one of those every 18 months here. We get a special permit application or amendment probably every week.
Well, I mean, as I said, a traffic study is not required. Expert testimony on that issue is not required. But when there is evidence in the record from someone opposing it, the applicant's burden is to come up with evidence that's outweighs, in the commission's opinion, the evidence that the neighbors have put on. In our case, to the extent the commission believes there is some evidence that traffic won't be affected, we believe we put on sufficient evidence to support a finding that the applicant has failed to prove that, beyond a reasonable, not beyond a reasonable doubt, but by a preponderance of the evidence standard, which is greater than 50%.
We,
You want me to make your
yeah, you.
response to that?
I mean,
Well,
yeah, I think I know what she's going to say.
The
Go ahead.
substantial evidence.
Okay.
But
The
it has
standard
to-
counsel is substantial evidence both
Not
ways.
preponderance, not,
When there's competing evidence, it's the commission's obligation to weigh the evidence and make a decision as to which witnesses and which evidence they're going to weight more heavily than others. And the weighting process is a 50% rule. On appeal, you can make any decision you want, but unless there's some substantial evidence in the record, and on appeal, it's not a 50-50. It's a judge is just going to look at the record and say, is there substantial evidence for whatever decision you make?
That's right, that's, so, I mean.
But your decision tonight, with respect to
the
evidence
last-
that's been presented, is which do you weigh more credibly?
I mean, a judge is just going to look at the record, say, did they do it appropriately?
For instance,
My problem here is it seems as though, it seems as though right now that we've received enough evidence to do anything.
well, it's this commission's job to decide with all the factors in the thing, whether each factor the applicant has satisfied their burden. Then the commission has to look at the evidence that the neighbors have put on, and it's got to do a weighing. It's got to say which evidence is more compelling. If I'm, for instance, with the appraisers, if you believe the report of one appraiser, you're entitled to, and on appeal, your belief and your credit of one appraiser over another is something that a superior court judge won't second guess.
Yeah. Well,
You have any other
no, they're just, no, but they say it differently depending on which thing we're talking about, so. But we don't have a certified appraisal from you either.
No, because these are opinion letters. Their opinion letter was presented as if it was the equivalent to a certified appraisal, but it's clearly not. And I believe if you take a look at our appraisal, she lays out, why that would be inappropriate for that to happen.
But I definitely, the Attorney Shansky definitely said that this was an opinion only, so.
Correct.
Never made
Correct.
any statement, so I just want to make sure that that's clear. All right, any other questions, sir? How about, any other questions for Attorney Cretella? We're good.
May I ask one question before you sit down?
Why, of course you can.
Thank you. Is Ms. Gibney here to be questioned?
No, Ms. Gibney is not here to be questioned. She had a prior engagement tonight.
Not a problem. Do you want to make any concluding statements?
Mr. Chairman, but could I defer to the public at this juncture and reserve my comments so that...
Sure.
it's-
So this is going to be questions only at this point. No for or against. So does anybody from the audience have any questions they would like to ask of the applicant, of the commission? And just please remember, name and address for the record. Thank you.
Barbara Major, 62 Norton Avenue. As far as questions, I'm wondering about lighting on the outside of the building. We talked a lot about ballards and walkways, but will the building be lit? Will the pool be lit? Will there be floodlights? Will they be on timers? What time will they go on? What time will they go off? Okay. Per the planning and zoning code for site plan approval, they need to, 273-97-5, outdoor illumination facilities, including height and specification for all luminaires, needs to be before a site plan is approved. So in the last meeting, also, and as well as this meeting, the attorney spoke about rules for the pool, that there won't be any parties, that this is not in the intended use. So I'm wondering, what are the rules? And do you have a copy of the rules? We'd like to see them. Great. And how will they be enforced?
The association,
And what does that mean?
condominium association, well, I'll ask.
Will they be present at the pool? the association?
The property maintenance man will be circulating the pool, yes,
But won't be present all the time?
24/7
At the pool?
over on the property.
At the complex.
And ping every time somebody enters the gate.
But how will the rules be enforced? You said the association, not the maintenance man.
Rules can be communicated, violations can be communicated through the property man to the association.
So the association will be present at the pool?
The association lives there. I don't know that they'll be in the pool.
Counselor, I got a question for you. Since you said it, the association will police this, but the association are the ones who are going to be using the pool. Is that correct?
The association members, including officers of the association, will be using it, yes.
Okay, thank you.
As is the case throughout the country.
Pretty, pretty standard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Also, maybe this would be a good moment to mention, if we were to put these, this is obviously just draft condominium association rules, so these are not,
Specific
anything
to-
now, obviously, but if the applicant were to consent to this, to these being put into the approval, and then the approval, and then it were to be approved, then our zoning enforcement officer would also be able to, do what she usually does, which she does a great job. But no, there's a certain amount of lag time on that type of enforcement, but it does come out to significant fines and other things after multiple violations.
So I'm wondering if I see another entrance to the pool, so there's a third entrance at the proposed handicap parking space. So there's 3 entrances to the pool, is that correct? Okay, and 2 are street access from outside the condominium complex, from the street, one from Norton and one from Halleck.
I think the pool entry from the handicap space is on the property.
Well, no, I'm talking about the entrances. So there's one from Norton and one from Halleck. So 2 entrances from the streets and one from the condo complex.
So one from the right of way, that's not Halleck there.
It's Norton.
It's neither.
One from Norton and one
That's
from
the
Halleck.
right of way, that's not.
Well, it's my property.
It's actually
One from
Perkins.
Norton Avenue
Or that's
Perkins property
Perkins
at
at
that
that point.
and, one entrance from the Norton Avenue direction and one entrance from the Halleck Street direction. So 2 entrances are from the street sides and one from the condo complex. Okay. I'm just wondering if that's a wise choice for safety. I'm wondering if that's a wise choice for safety, as far as, why do they need access here? It's an invitation. And how will a handicapped person who parks here get to the pool area?
There's a gate through the.
There's a gate, but is there a walkway? And wouldn't it be closer for them to park in the condo complex and access the pool that way? I just think that these 2 entrances can be eliminated for safety. Let's see, will the property lines of 25 Halleck remain? Will they remain intact? In other words, will this still be delineated as, will they be property lines? Will this property line be erased? No. Okay, so I guess that brings me to my next question. I'm wondering, so they're looking to amend the special permit from 2015, quote-unquote, to include 25 Halleck Street. So I'm wondering, how does the change of use happen? Is that another process to go, is that another regulatory process? I guess this is for the board. The change of use from a residential property to a communal clubhouse.
With the special permit, but.
That's what this hearing is about.
That's what this
Right.
is.
Okay.
Correct.
It doesn't ever say really that it's a change of use. And I'm still not sure why it will not become part of, if 66 High Street is in the historic district and we're talking about adjoining this property to 66 High Street? It's going to be adjoining, is it going to be adjacent?
It's still going to be 25 Halleck.
So, I mean,
Even if it were combined, it wouldn't put it in the historic district, and
but it's adjoining to a property that is.
I understand, and the dividing fence is approved by the historic district commission.
I wasn't asking about the fence approval. I'm wondering, where will the pool water be backwashed? Where will the solid and liquid waste be disposed of?
By the DEP general permit, so full compliance with that.
Okay, it does need to state a provision for solid and liquid waste must be provided to the commission. Let's see. How will they have an emergency generator? We've had 3 very prolonged power outages, week-long, 7 to 10 days. How will, that be bridged? Will there be an emergency generator?
Not that I know of, just what would be used.
What would be used? So it could accumulate. Okay, will there be a dumpster on the property? No. And can you describe the exercise equipment, because that was new to us? So now there's a gym in the pool, in the clubhouse?
Area.
A fitness area?
Yeah, and I don't know exactly, it's not a large fitness area. My impression is that it's a treadmill, maybe a cycle thing, or a treadmill, maybe a stair climber. I mean, I think there's room for like a couple pieces of equipment and a weight bench.
Okay. So just, adds to the usage of the building or the potential use of the building. Okay, thank you very much.
Anybody else have any questions? Sure.
One quick question, maybe Notice Marjorie, does the right-of-way grant owners of the 25 Halleck Street property, is that in their deed as well?
I don't know the answer to that. I don't know the answer to that.
Okay, so. Okay, so if there's any, do you have to change? Or should- 12, all right, so there's no more questions from the commission? Oh, I'm sorry, please.
Hi, I'm Dibby McCartney, and I live at 50 High Street. My question to you is, before you take your vote, will you determine where those 57 wonderful people are who signed the online petition, where they live, if they live in Sopo or not? That's what we call our neighborhood south of the Post Road, you see. So will you be able to determine where those people live? Because on the paper that went around the neighborhood asking for support, if you wanted to, not everyone signed it, but we were requested to put down our address so that we could possibly say, gee, they've got a valid opinion, they live in the neighborhood.
Or if we vote tonight, we're not getting the addresses. If we vote next time, there's a good chance that we're getting some of them.
Well, there were a couple of addresses. There was one in Poland and a couple
Yeah,
in
so-
Great Britain. So, I don't know that that's that relevant to me.
Well, so. I don't know the legal answer to that question.
Oh, it's not a legal question, it's just asking
If,
you guys what you
if it-
think.
If it's relevant, then I think that we would. So,
Mhm.
like I said, I don't believe we're going to reach a decision tonight.
Okay,
So, in answer to your question, it will probably have addresses if it's relevant and if it's advice by legal counsel
okay.
to recommend us to do that.
All right, very good. And may I ask a question of Mr. Nolt?
Of course. That's what he's here for.
Okay. Mr. Nolt, I don't know if this is an elephant in the room or not, but when this was originally passed, it was, gee, there's no more land to develop, so there can't be any more development. And then, lo and behold, you got some more land. So you're developing that, and there are other things that kind of got left out of the plan for the original drawing. For instance, the the covering for the parking at South Fair. So will there be more things, do you think, coming up that maybe got left out, like a basketball court or a tennis court or a bocce court or a trampoline or anything like that? I was just curious.
I'm not certain what you're referring to. When the project showed and will gazebo will be built for all the residents to use along the marsh edge.
Right.
Kind of a
Mosquito Village.
barbecue cookout area, common area. There'll be walking trails along the back. I guess perhaps what you were asking or what you're alluding to is there's a large, there's an on-site septic system that will control or limit any additional development on the project.
Right, but that would be, the septic, right, like the septic system for the home is now going to be the septic system which you're going to alter for the clubhouse. So you can't build another building, but can you build, say, a bocce court?
Are you referring to this property?
25 Howland?
I am talking about 66 High.
No intention to build any other area or amenity. Like I mentioned, a walking trail, all the features that were shown and approved by P&Z
Right.
are fully in the plan. So.
Okay, but you still, the plan for the parking, covering the parking at South Fair?
You mean the parking along?
If you were to come straight from South Fair and not stop?
And that wasn't part of the original plan.
No, that's what I mean.
That was denied and we didn't build it.
Okay, I was just wondering if there was any other items. Okay, thank you so much.
Please.
Arlene Minjone from 20 Halleck Street. And just a clarification, kind of what Debbie was saying, Mr. Knoll, I have to be very curious that with the purchase of this property, which is straight across from me and diagonal, and I know that they have asked for the people directly across from me to sell their home as well. I can't help but wonder if those homes all across from me are kind of in your plans for 66 High to be consumed in part of 66, leaving me like with no neighbors. I just have to ask. And
Certainly.
kind of seems almost like, I think there's even a term for it, something like assemblage. It just seems like 66 is trying to take up. They're starting here. They've already asked Wayne, will you sell your property? Where's it going to end? Am I going to be like one of those properties that are in the middle of a conglomerate of 66 High and I just put my foot down and say I'm not moving? But, what's the deal? What else is...
You can answer it if you want, but for commission's sake, we need to stick to question, and I
So
respect, I know there's passion,
yeah.
I get it.
I just
but
want to know
I
if
understand,
there's
but we
other
we have
intentions.
We have to stick with what the application is for. So maybe that's a question after the meeting, maybe ask them, if you don't mind, because I really, and for any other questions, can we leave them to the application? Because I'm sure there could be a lot of...
I'd like to answer.
You definitely can. Quickly, though.
Because, okay.
Please.
The neighborhood and the Planning and Zoning Commission and the project have been through a lot together. I think that we've stood by our commitments. We viewed it as a great project for the town of Guilford, for the neighborhood to take an industrial parcel and convert it to residential so that they would never have to worry about the future use of that property. 25 Halleck Street, or none of the other properties were ever part of the plan. The project is being marketed to empty nesters as a luxury condominium. Feedback from the real estate agents and from prospective buyers is that, boy, we really want a pool, and most projects of this nature have that amenity. And so that's where the need arose. It's not part of any kind of secret plan. As my witness, this project is just in reaction to the need to try to sell these units to meet the market of a luxury condominium to people of my age and above that want to have a recreation facility, a place to swim laps or whatever. There's no intention to buy additional property. There's no master plan of any other hidden amenities, and the property at 25 Halleck became available, and we thought as one of the least intrusive in terms of impacts to the neighborhood. Adjoining along the back right away, adjacent to the Perkins property. And let's not forget that the Perkins property is not a great neighbor. And so this wasn't, picked out of the middle of the neighborhood and decided to pick a pool. This was kind of along the back side of the property to add a pool as a sales feature. And that's the truth.
Has no bearing on the decision, but thank you. We got another question? Hi.
Leslie Marcus, 68 Norton Avenue. Mr. Knott, can you just confirm the current elevation of 25 Halleck Street and what the final elevation will be? I think you mentioned might be a new roof or some decorative touches. Is the elevation going to change from what it is now, and what is it now? I don't recall seeing.
So I think Attorney Shansky submitted as part of her package the renderings, but just visually here tonight, if you were to put scale over scale, there's no change in roof lines. In terms of when you say elevation to an engineer, I thought you meant the first floor. It is 1 foot above the flood elevation. The base flood there elevation is 10. The first floor is 10.8 or 10.7, something like that.
Thank you. So just to clarify, the elevation of the current 25 Halleck Street property will be brought up to flood code and be a little bit taller than it is now?
No. It's existing above flood.
Okay.
And that's where full chemicals will be stored, et cetera.
Okay.
There won't be any change in the roof height. There won't be, that it'll block any additional vistas or anything like that.
Okay, so
largely unchanged in terms of outside of the scale.
Okay, so as a direct neighbor across the street, I will be looking at basically exactly what I see now, except it'll just be covered in the nice clapboard finish of the 66 High Street.
And the driveway will be narrowed and there'll be more green.
Got it. Okay, thank you. You mentioned occupancy for the pool and clubhouse. The patio, I know there's a large patio that's going to be built for people to rest around the pool. What is the did I miss that in the earlier part of the hearing? What is the capacity of the patio structure?
I guess I could lay out Chase lounge chairs along the area, but that's not the assembly area. Buildings are, assembly is rated by building size, and so the building couldn't hold more than 35 persons.
Okay, but if people were to gather maybe during the swimming season or off-season, maybe to congregate and
standing outside on the patio.
Right. Just curious if that is different than the 35 that could be fit inside.
So we're mixing fire safety, life safety code,
Okay.
which contemplates the building size, determines its maximum occupancy, so you can safely get those people out of the building, as a rating that we were referring to, as an inside building rating.
Okay. And then just to clarify, there will be no alcohol, is that correct?
No alcohol in the pool site.
I'm sorry.
Okay, but alcohol is permitted in the clubhouse?
I think so.
Okay. And did you say no glassware is permitted poolside, but it's inside? Catering services, or is that going to?
Any parties?
There's no facilities inside for catering.
Okay, but it'll be clarified, if this were to go through, it would be clarified in the association documents that.
And conditions of approval.
Oh, okay, got it.
One more question, because we have under a minute now, so we're going to change the tape if you can.
Sure.
Let us, we're going to go off the record, no business will be discussed while we're changing the tape. Or digital, whatever you're doing. We are back. I'll assure everybody we've conducted no business while we were in a short break, and we'll pick up with your question.
Again, Leslie Marcus at 68 Norton Avenue.
Can I just interrupt you one time? I'm sorry, real quick. Also, for everybody out there, if you guys could really listen to the question, and please don't ask the same question, because I will stop it. So, just trying to be transparent here, so listen to all the questions and the answers. And if you don't like the answer, or you think it needs more explanation, then you can please clarify it. Go ahead, thank you.
Thank you. The day after the last hearing, I noticed that 25 Halleck was listed for rent, and my question is that property being rented as a single-family residence at this time? Okay.
I don't know. I think the right answer is I don't know.
Okay, so you're not sure. Okay, that would be great. The reason I ask is because if it is being rented, I'm not sure how long that lease is, but perhaps that means construction, if this were to be approved, might be delayed a period of time. So that leads to my next question, which would be, when would construction of this potentially take place? And third, I just wanted to ask, I know a number of the commission members were not available at our last hearing. I was curious if all of you had the opportunity to watch the minutes from the last meeting, and if you haven't, if that's something that you do. Okay.
That's sitting here tonight.
Okay.
If it gets continued, it's very likely that I'll be completely caught up by the next time.
Okay.
But if we're voting tonight, I'm out.
Okay, because I know the minutes are a great way to just sort of recap quickly, but I think the importance of hearing what was said by microphone is important. Thank you.
The answer to the construction question would be spring.
Spring of 18? Spring of 18. Okay, thank you.
Earliest would be spring.
Okay, thank you.
Please.
Hi, Allison Alkire, 33 Norton Avenue. My question is for the commission. You mentioned earlier that the association had rules, and Attorney Shansky provided copies of a draft of what those would be. Having lived in associations before, we understand that these things are always subject to change. They're voted on by the members themselves. So what I'm wondering is, if you were to approve this project with the current rules in effect, and the association were later to vote to make changes in it, would there be a requirement that they would have to come back to planning and zoning to have it approved again?
We voted
Yes.
that the rules become conditions of approval, so that if there were intended to or desired to be a change, it would have to come back.
Okay, great, thank you.
Hello, my name is Jackie Peters. I live at 41 Murray Lane in Guilford. I do not live in the neighborhood, so the pool really has no impact in my life. But I would like to ask the board to consider the party that everyone keeps on talking about. I was the host of, one of the hosts of that party. And I know I saw the last meeting, and there was a resident who spoke of it being unneighborly and the police not allowing her to come. And I just want to clarify to all of you that, as I said, it was a fundraiser. I do a walk for breast cancer. This is my 5th walk this year. We've had parties at 4 residences in Madison and Guilford in the past, and the Horton Group and their affiliates offered to hold one at High Street this year for us. We thought it was a great idea. Lots of businesses and people in town came to it. Everyone was welcome. The only time a policeman showed up at the event was when they came to ask because a neighbor had a concern about what was going on. They came, they saw, they left. There was no issues with anything going on there. No ordinances were broken, and they left the premises. Everyone was welcome. Like I said, a donation was asked for because it was a fundraiser. We raised thousands of dollars. It's not an everyday occurrence down at High Street. I know this for a fact because a lot of work, blood, sweat, and tears went into it. And I don't think the pool will have anything to do with any parties like that either. So I just wanted to say that. Thank you very much.
Well, my question was to make sure that you guys knew that.
Okay.
That was
Now we do. Okay. Questions. We'll get to testimony right after the questions. You have a question? Perfect. Come on up.
So, yeah, Patrick Romano, 57 Norton Avenue. I live next door to
I have 3 children, ages 4, 6, and 8. Prior to last year, their bus stop was at the corner of Halleck and Norton. The bus company moved that bus stop to High and Halleck because of the traffic and parking situation on Halleck. Having to walk my kids up Halleck when there's landscaping trucks and parked vehicles that were not there a year and a half ago, there are times where I literally fear for the life of my children as people come around that corner, not realizing there's a truck or a vehicle parked there. And I have to constantly make sure that I'm next to my kids and they are up against the side of the road walking to that bus stop. I also witnessed the fire engine. In fact, I assure you, my name is listed in that police report as a witness to the fire truck accident back in March. I was preparing to walk my kids to the bus stop when that happened. So my question is to this board, are you going to take every measure to ensure what this attorney is talking about when it comes to traffic and safety? I don't care about parking where people conveniently park, and I really don't care about their damn pool. What I care about is the safety of my children who have to walk the street to get to their buses, who play, who have balls that run into the yard, into the street. So my question to the board is, please, are you planning to take every bit of consideration when it comes to the traffic impact?
100%, everything that's been submitted, we will absolutely take, absolutely.
Thank you.
100%. I'm speaking on behalf of all of us, because
Thank you.
I think that's accurate, right?
You can do that.
Okay.
I mean, just to be clear, we don't control the road. Except for Walter. Except Walter. No, we don't actually, control what Public Works exactly does with the roads, and there are certain things that they can do and have been doing, especially down near Seaside and in other places for traffic calming. I'm not aware of them having done anything on Halleck or Norton or High, but I'm aware of them having done quite a bit by the Green and by the beach. And they have a number of different strategies that I am not even close to qualified to tell you about, but you might want to consider talking to, the head of Public Works or, someone else in Town Hall South about the options for that road, regardless of whether this experience goes one way or the other, because they really have been very aggressive about coming up with traffic calming options, especially throughout South Guilford, I've noticed.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Walter. Questions, any other questions? Okay.
Barbara Major, 62 Norton Avenue. I have one more question just to clarify about the clubhouse being open year-round, because in the last meeting it was changing of the tape. It wasn't really answered clearly, and I'm still unclear now. So the pool is going to be open, proposed pool is 3 months of the year, but the clubhouse is available year-round for renting? No. Usage? For 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. So year-round, so it's dark at 4:30 in the winter. So it would have to be lit, and I would imagine exterior lights pointing from the building. Because, if it's going to be a year-round amenity now you're talking about a year-round amenity, which is different than a seasonal pool. And the access coming from the condos to get, around the pool area and then into this clubhouse, around the pool, into the clubhouse. You still have to walk all the way to the other side of the property. You can't do that in the dark. So it needs to be well lit.
42-inch bollards.
Only, so no outside lighting on the house at all?
Existing.
Exterior, like wall sconce type lighting that's there now?
Oh, yeah, I submitted a picture of what's there now. It's very low
Light on the
impact.
right-of-way side, there's a light on the garage side.
Right.
There's a couple of lights on the back.
Right.
Yeah, 42.
But it won't shine enough into the pool. You're not going to be able to see walking from the pool to the clubhouse.
Bollards are meant to be walkway lighting.
Right. So you're not going to change any of the exterior lighting that's there
Just
now?
building mounted lights that are, similar to what's there now.
Similar to what's there?
They're replacing what's there.
Okay.
No
So-
individual light poles.
No. Yeah, okay. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to We're going to go for some testimony now. So we're going to start as kind of how we kind of do this here. So people who wish to speak in favor, we like, and this is going to be for people who are also in opposition, we like to keep the comments. I know it's very passionate. I promise you, I'm going to make a recommendation that we not vote on this tonight. I want to digest everything. We would like to close it, but I want anybody that wants to be heard. Try not to repeat the same things over and over again. We have heard you from the last meeting. It's on record. Commissioners will review that record. We will refresh ourselves. So right now, we'd like to have anybody that'd like to speak in favor of this project, please come up, name and address for the record. And then you can go.
Hi, I'm Stan Dombrowski. I live at 66 High Street. I greatly respect all of the community residents and their right to their opinion regarding this application, but I would like to address what I believe to be false and misleading information that was presented at the last meeting. A few neighbors would like to have you believe that us as residents of 66 High Street, our use of the pool will lead to loud music, crazy parties, and unruly behavior. That assertion is completely baseless. My wife and I have lived in this town for almost 27 years. We've always been great citizens to our neighbors. We've been good neighbors, and we've always been friends with those that have lived around us. And we expect the same here. And we've lived here for a year, and we've gotten to know great people and developed great relationships. To somehow characterize us as not being respectful of our neighbors is simply wrong. Like us, the great majority of people that have moved into these condominiums are longtime Guilford citizens. They love and respect their community. In reality, the group is mostly made up of empty nesters who no longer need the houses that they raise their children in. And now they enjoy living in this community, near the green and near the water. And I would simply ask those who have made what I consider erroneous claims to actually meet and get to know each of us. Because the attempt to predict our behavior and label us as somehow not being respectful of our neighbors and good community citizens is simply, I object to it and I find it offensive. Thank you.
So you're in favor of this, right?
I certainly am.
Okay. Yes, sir.
My name is Jim Blank. I live at 66 High Street. I wanted to point out that the association is in a unique position right now because we're going through a transition from the developer to being controlled to a certain point by the homeowners. So I think that the board may have a unique option to take some of the rules and regulations that they want to put into the, should you approve it, that some of the people who are here are going to be on the board, that they can stipulate those into the condominium association. The association has the ability to provide fines, whether they were for parking, misuse, or whatever. So I think that it's a good opportunity for the people who live there and also for the board and the people who are in opposition, maybe to come together and create rules that work and that can be instituted into the condominium documents too. So it's a very unique situation that doesn't occur often.
Anybody else like to speak in favor of this application at this time? Okay, anybody would like to speak in opposition?
In favor?
Oh, yeah, in favor, sorry.
Sorry.
Chris Moore, 66 High Street, longtime resident of Guilford. That development and that project and the people that live there are deserving of having a pool. I've heard both pros and cons and everything. This is a very high-quality project, only superseded by the quality of the people that live there. And to think that these people are going to destroy the neighborhood or raise hell in the neighborhood is just absurd to me. I'm sorry, but we're very respectful people, and we deserve to have a pool in that project. Thank you.
Anybody else would like to speak in favor at this time? Okay. Anybody would like to speak in opposition?
Stan Minjone, 20 Halleck Street. Just for the people that are in favor of the project, I know the opposition, the neighborhood. I haven't heard anyone speak badly or say disrespectful things or that you're bad people. We're objecting to this project based solely on the criteria. Again, A, the location does not fit the harmony of the neighborhood. In speaking to Mr. Nault's comment about the saleability of 66 High, I can appreciate maybe the condos aren't selling because there is no pool, but we have to be careful of the neighborhoods we're creating in Guilford, bettering one and at the detriment of others. So I hope you would deny this. Thank you.
Anybody else would like to speak in opposition at this time? Please.
Again, Arlene Minjone from 20 Halleck. I have to reiterate what my husband said. By no means is any of my testimony been saying that I feel as though the residents of 66 High Street are disrespectful. I just feel that the usage of this pool, no matter how respectful we are as neighbors, that a pool just generally can create the noise levels, and with what's planned, the traffic. We're trying to stick with the things that the board or the commission would be interested in, but unfortunately it will come across as a personal attack, and it's not that manner at all. We welcomed you as neighbors at 66 High. We still welcome you. It's just this particular project is a little close to home where we had to address it. So, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Barbara Major, 62 Norton Avenue. I'd just like to reiterate what Stan and Arlene just said. I have never indicated, nor was my intention of saying anything negative about the residents of 66 High Street. Everyone we have met from over there is wonderful. People come up to me when they walk by my house. I'm out there gardening all the time. They talk to me. I've talked to you a couple times, and everyone's very, very nice. It has nothing to do with the residents. It's not, it's not a reflection on the residents at all. Everyone's been very, very nice over there that I've met. So I just want to talk a little bit about 25 Halleck being located in a residential zone, an R1 zone. So R is for residential. So residential is an adjective, and the definition of residential is designed for people to live in. Merriam-Webster is used as a residence, restricted to or occupied by residences. Vocabulary.com says residential is an adjective that expresses a relationship with homes, apartments, or any place where people live. The definition of residential is something related to a dwelling or a location where people live. No one will live here. No one will live in this residence, in this R1 zone. As per the Guilford Planning and Zoning Regulations, Table 4, which Attorney referred to, permitted uses in the residential zone. Items 6 to 10 speak of dwellings specifically. Item 6, dwellings, single family and not more than one dwelling per lot, that's a permitted use. Dwellings containing two dwellings in one dwelling, two dwelling units in one dwelling, not more than one such dwelling per lot is also a permitted use. 8 to 10 discuss other dwellings those are permitted, these other ones require special permits. Also per the zoning code, chapter 273-2, page 6, is the definition of a dwelling, which is a building designed as a residence for occupancy by one or more families. So that's the definition per the Guilford Planning and Zoning Regulations of a dwelling that also is spoken about in Table 4 for permitted uses in an R1 zone. Nowhere in the zoning code does it state that it's unacceptable for a building to simply have a residential appearance, which was stated numerous times in the last meeting. I could say that the new buildings at Fonticello's have a residential appearance. They have clapboard and they have shutters and they have plantings, but nobody lives there. I'd also like to talk about curb appeal. So again, the dictionary of curb appeal is the visual attractiveness of a house as seen from the street. There will be no curb appeal for this proposal. Now, this is based on the priorly submitted drawing, which had the fence going all the way around the property, the entire perimeter, which was 360 linear feet of cedar fencing. There's nothing else like that in the neighborhood. It's not, there's no curb appeal there. Now it's reduced a bit, but it's still not a residential curb appeal, in my opinion. I'd like to address the statement made by, I keep wanting to say Attorney Shatsky. How do you pronounce your name? Shansky. Thank you very much. I know it's Attorney Shatsky too, that's why. Pardon me. That she said the pictures that I submitted of the other pools in the area have no bodies in them. Like, that was an oversight. It was, there's no bodies in them on purpose. I made sure that there was no bodies in the pool for tactful reasons, not to take pictures of people in a pool. I wouldn't want my picture sitting at the P&Z meeting. So the purpose of my pictures were to point out that none of the downtown condominium complexes have clubhouses, and that they're all nestled within the confines of the condo complex, being Rollwood, Seaview Terrace, and West River Village, so that they don't have clubhouses. That was the purpose of my picture. Again, I can only reiterate that this is not a backyard pool, as many people have said. Contrary to what the attorney said, it is not a backyard pool. It is not in any comparison a backyard pool. Guilford residents, quote unquote, signed the petition in favor of the proposal. Our petition is signed by our neighboring residents. And, the attorney also stated that it was an uplifting to the neighborhood, that these improvements will be uplifting to the neighborhood. She doesn't live in the neighborhood. I do. It's not going to be uplifting at all. So I don't know how you can make that statement that's uplifting to the neighborhood. I'd like to tell you a little bit about myself. I moved to Guilford in 1977. I graduated from Guilford High School. I purchased my home on Norton Avenue in 2003. We moved there to raise our children in a neighborhood. I've worked very hard in my career. I've been a nurse for 32 years. And we've made a lot of financial sacrifices to live in that neighborhood, to live downtown. It's expensive to live downtown. The neighborhood kids all grew up together and were all friends. They rode bikes, they drew with sidewalk chalk in our driveways, they played manhunt, they hung out in the backyards. We helped each other through hurricanes, with 3 prolonged power outages. We cleaned up and we rebuilt. Who had the cooking abilities, who had a working shower, who had a generator. There's been difficult times and exciting times, but we've been there for each other. This is the neighborhood that I live in. It will no longer be that neighborhood for myself, my neighbors, and future residents of this precious and peaceful downtown neighborhood. It will not be the same. I will no longer have a neighbor across the street from me. There will be a building, a multi-purpose communal building, a building that is not in harmony and does not conform to the neighborhood or the development of the town of Guilford. The applicant does not meet the burden to prove this is a viable use, nor does the application meet the criteria for a special permit to change the use of 25 Halleck Street from a single-family residential home to a communal condominium pool with a large clubhouse. They are asking permission to do something that differs from the basic zoning regulations. I implore the Planning and Zoning Commission to abide by the current zoning regulations for an R1 zone and deny this application before you today. Thank you very much.
Anybody else looking to speak in opposition at this time? Okay. So, hearing none. Yes, would you like to have a final comment?
Well, Mr. Chairman, first of all, I would like you to please hold the hearing open because we received evidence this evening which merits response by the applicant because it indeed is the applicant's burden. I want to first make a couple of comments about Ms. Gibney's letter which says by its terms that she has not reviewed market data or performed an analysis nor arrived at a conclusion based on such data. This letter is no better or worse than Mr. Glidden's letter. Mr. Glidden is here. He's been here both evenings if you'd like to talk to him about his opinion. Her comments about the USPAP standards don't stand for anything that relates to Mr. Glidden's letter. Requires an appraiser to provide an appraisal by definition or opinion of value based that must be credible. He did not purport in his letter, and you can examine it, he never uses the word value. So she is holding him to a standard which is not what he has provided to this commission. So it is no more, no less, and her absence makes it, I would argue, less. Perhaps she'll come next time. Another item in her letter, she talks about the common person logic to value analysis and employs a phrase, this type of facility. What type of facility? How is the facility defined to which she makes or ascribes that comment? So in that respect, it is no better or no worse. I would submit less than Mr. Glidden's, which was supplemented by the frequency or the appearance of sales within a 1 mile radius of properties with pools. Mr. Attorney Cretella has not stated accurately, from my perspective, the evidentiary standard. There's no 50-50. The credibility of the witnesses is the province of the agency. That is the citation. You get to decide who you believe. He would like you to believe him, his array. We would like you to believe our array. The judgment is yours, but it's not this. It's who do you believe? And is there substantial evidence to support that decision? That's what you look at, and the court looks at whether there is substantial evidence to support the decision. I want to look at that accident report more closely and say some more things about traffic. I'd like to do that at the next meeting, and it would be brief. I assure you, Mr. Chairman, it would be brief.
Attorney Shansky, I don't know if it's going to be brief. If we hold it open, we're going to have at least two.
Let her finish.
Well, I mean, what we're going to have is at least two more members that have just been appointed by the Board of Selectmen, and they're going to show up probably next meeting. So there'll be a different crew. Let her finish. All right, let's finish. Good.
I have other things, although I'm having difficulty marshaling my notes right now. I would say about the most recent commentary about residents, this is a request for a special permit to amend the special permit for 66 High Street. So yes, that's what a residence is, but this is a special permit to do this, and that falls within the ambit of your regulations as well. I do want to say, although some of these things are subjective, but I do think that there's also an objective way to examine that pulling the fence back from the front to the house and greening, reducing the size of the driveway, and substantially increasing the amount of greenery and lawn is an enhancement, that is an improvement, and that it's maintaining the existing structure, the footprint of the structure. So in that respect, it is an improvement to the existing site aesthetically. And the building is the building. You know, I've described to you the occupancies. It's not a large clubhouse, and it has a strict set of rules. So with that, my interest is in giving you more evidence on the issue of traffic, since that seems to be the abiding issue, and perhaps anything more on the appraisal issue, although I think that that is established. And if you have questions for Mr. Glidden, please ask them. He's here. Thank you.
Okay, so here's my suggestion. and I believe somebody needs to make a motion, I can't. I think we have plenty of information. I think this is a very contentious, if that's the right word, case. Either way we vote on this, it's going to affect somebody. So my suggestion is we take all the information we have. I would love, because I'm not an attorney, to have our attorney review it.
But if you think you're on the verge of closing this hearing, Mr. Knoll would say just a couple of things before you did. If you-
Are we
with your
actually
lead.
closing the public hearing, or are we going to continue the public heering as well?
No, I'm moving to close it, or I'm
Close
asking
public
to
hearing.
close it, absolutely.
So what we'll do,
With not rendering a vote, with getting information. We have 65 days after we close it.
yeah.
So that's
Plenty
exactly
of
what I want to do.
time,
Right.
But then then they'd be confined to only the questions that we actually ask.
Exactly.
Mr. Chairman,
Yeah.
respectfully,
Yeah.
but if you were going to consult with counsel at this point. I
Oh,
would-
he absolutely will be reviewing everything.
Well, I would suggest that there would be some prudence associated with keeping it open, just in the event
Okay.
that there are questions that emerge through him, which would be foreclosed if you closed it, in fairness to all parties.
We can, because we can be more.
Okay,
to
so
use
let me finish my
Oh,
thought.
sorry,
So-
yeah, go.
So I would like to close the public hearing with everybody's support. We have enough information. We have enough to pour over. I want to hear our attorney's opinion on this, ask him to render an opinion, and then at the next meeting, we can, if we feel it's time, we can.
Do you want to continue it?
No, I said close it.
Okay.
Close it. I'm very clear here, right? Close it. And I'd like somebody to make a motion.
I would support you in this only because we have ample information in front of
Absolutely.
us to make a decision. And we have had the applicant and the residents opposing the applicant have had ample opportunity, 2 full meetings.
Yes.
To give us that information. It's not like, we said, you got 10 minutes. This is a long period of time. And so I make a motion that we close the public hearing.
Chairman, just someone had asked a question I'd like to just address before you close
Okay.
it. Quickly.
Yep.
A big issue that I didn't see coming, because I don't think it's an issue, is traffic and access. Traffic that was a result of 66 High Street, which resulted in people parking along here, was during the height of the construction phase when we had 75 or more workers on the project working. We had steel, concrete, earth moving, et cetera. That all has been done. The building foundations are all in. The next bit of it will be tradesmen of steel first, and then building construction, that we now have space on site to park them. At the time we were building a septic system, all the space on the property, they even leased property from Perkins to park people, but it was just too much. So that was construction workers parking. They were parked on High Street, they were parked on the right-of-way, they were probably parked on Halleck and Norton. But under occupancy of the project, there's more than ample parking on the project. Two spots per unit, plus 18 unassigned. Yep, unassigned, that won't be an issue. And residents, so that's the parking issue. It won't be people from High Street accessing the pool parking over here. Why would you? Why would you get in your car and drive over here when you walk through the project, through the back site? Because traffic shouldn't be a major consideration of a pool that's a part of attached to the site. Thank you.
Can I get is there a second? I got your motion, second. Well, we'll have discussion.
Yeah,
So discussion.
Yes, now we're in discussion.
Yes.
So I think that'll be okay as long as we can actually still ask them direct questions, which of course we can.
Right, we
But,
can.
but we.
You will not be able to solicit any information
We
or
just-
ask any questions of the applicant or the public. The only input that you can get after you close the public hearing will be from staff, which can be, analysis of information that's already been received. It cannot be new information or new evidence.
And also from council, right?
Council is staff.
Council is staff.
Correct.
Yeah.
I think it's,
Well, we
maybe
have
getting to,
asked questions.
there's also a kind of, there's an interesting question whether or not, Walter, you can vote on the question
to close the public hearing. I've never had that issue come up before. Obviously, you cannot vote on any application, on the application itself.
Well, he's here today.
I think that's
Probably you can,
Yeah, that's.
but I don't know the answer.
If we were
I'm not a
sitting in front of
lawyer.
each
I don't
other,
know the answer to that question.
I'll let you
But
vote.
Well, I mean, also.
that'll be a judgment that the chairman will have to make, whether you're allowed to vote on
Okay, you
this
can vote.
on this motion.
Any other
I
discussion?
I think we might be better off holding the public hearing open and just being more fascist about it. What I mean is, that's a poor choice of words, especially this particular week, or this year. My concern is that that there may still be information out there that we want to procure, and the chair has very broad discretion to limit the conversation, which it's great that you have not done up to this point, and now at this point, now that we've had 2 hearings, there may still be an opportunity to get individual pieces of information that clarify something with a public hearing that is much tighter.
Understood. So, any other discussion?
I feel that we have enough information. I feel that we've given ample opportunity to the applicants and the other folks to provide information, and we could go on and on and on for months, and we could bring all politics into it, and we can do all that. But the truth is, we're a land use commission. We have rules and regulations. We have a limit of 2 hearings, or we provide 2 hearings, and that has always been adequate in the past. So I stand by it. I think we need to just close the public hearing.
Any other discussion? Let's call a vote. All in favor? All opposed? Any abstaining? All right, motion carries. Thank you.
So the public hearing is closed.
Yes.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, can I get an approval to the revised agenda?
Motion to approve the revised agenda.
Yeah, can I remind everybody that?
Public, that you can still come back and watch us make the decision.
Yes.
Which can be very exciting.
Next meeting.
And
we are
deliberation.
And we are still conducting a meeting, so please go outside and talk. Okay, so we have applications to be received. Craig Maturo, 23 Water Street. Act on that tonight? Receive and take action. Okay, is somebody here? You're just trying to get through? Let Craig get his. Yeah, we did that.
Approval of the revised agenda.
We did that. While you were still talking. You didn't vote?
We did that. Where were you?
Did you vote yes?
I do vote yes.
Okay,
yes.
Walter voted yes if you missed that. Rich made the motion on the approved agenda. He seconded it, and we all voted yes, if you missed that. Okay, so you got it.
Lisa.
Hey, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
In as much as our new member is here, do you want to invite him to sit up here to get the feel of the camera and the panel and all that stuff? No.
Not yet.
Yeah?
No. Yes, sir. Name and address for the record, please.
It's Craig Maturo. I'm here as a managing member, Whitfield Street LLC. 63 Whitfield Street, Guilford.
Somebody's got to, your day job as a dealer at the casino is going to be in jeopardy.
You waited all this
Good
time.
job,
I feel
Craig.
like you have to give us.
All right. Craig, go for it.
Okay, so...
Don't forget your name and address for the record. Or if you, did you do that?
I did it.
Okay.
Okay.
It's a long night.
So I thought the whatever you call it, stand stays here, but apparently doesn't. So I need to speak right into this?
Yeah, try.
Okay. Yeah, right, I can't sing for you, but, okay. So I'm basically here to ask for a change of use. Back in, I believe it was 2010, Upstairs, above, this is Elysian Spa, which used to be Sensation. Does everybody know this building? Yeah. Okay. So upstairs is a small office. It's probably about 400 square feet. And the woman's retiring, so we changed the use back in 2010 from apartment to office. And I'm here to just simply ask to change it back. And what I would like to do, if you want to know a little bit about the project, is what I've done on the other side of the building. It's the same building, just the opposite end. I added a dormer and added patio doors and a little balcony, and we created a studio apartment. So, yes.
For staff, the previous use is not still approved?
No, it was a change, it was occupied as office, so technically it requires us to approve the change back to residential. You do have a memo from the Director of Health about the septic system.
Why don't we read that?
I'll read that into the record. From Dennis Johnson, dated
somebody shuts up.
August 16, 2017. Subject being Craig Maturo, 23 Water Street, Building 2, map 39, lot 86. Based upon current water use data for existing tenants, adequate wastewater disposal capacity is available within the septic system serving the building for the applicant's proposed change in use of office space back to apartment. The applicant's proposed apartment will be limited to a one-bedroom capacity. It is recommended that this applicant's proposed change be approved.
Thank you. Well, no, not yet, because we're all good with parking, all of that stuff is good, right, because it already was existing, so, no.
Everything's the same. They have a new parking area. 6 months ago, the structure had a serious roof problem, roof leak problem in the business. Where when rain got heavy, the woman actually had a lot of books for sale, of course, up there. It was
You're talking about Joyce Communications?
Joyce Communications had multiple buckets out on the floor in order to catch the rainwater.
Initially, quite a few years back, she did have some issues, and the roof was repaired.
This was in the winter season.
Yeah.
This winter season.
Yeah. This winter season?
And what are we getting at here?
Oh, no, I
Yeah,
just don't know if that, does that affect our decision about the use if the roof
If
is,
the roof is bad, somebody's not going to rent it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty good with maintenance around the ring,
All right.
so you know, like,
Okay.
people think I work for the town. I mean, I'm not
Right.
there working hard. Yeah, I mean, I would not leave my
Right.
tenant like in a jam. But you are right, several years back, there was some roof issue. I think you're talking about the winter before, but you're absolutely right.
was it the winter before? All right.
We did repair the roof.
Okay.
Perfect. Any other questions? Good.
It doesn't apply to the decision.
Okay. It's just what I thought.
You just want to throw that in.
Somebody get a motion?
Voted that the Guilford Planning and Zoning Commission approve a site plan application for a change of use at 23 Water Street, Building 2, map 39, lot 86, from office to apartment as shown in an application dated August 10, 2017. There are no conditions applied to this site plan, and the application is approved based upon a finding that it conforms with the zoning code.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? No, sounds good. Call for, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? No.
Congratulations.
Thank you,
Good
Craig.
work.
Thank you.
Arlene Booley, Everlasting LLC, receive and take action this evening. Somebody here? Thanks, guys, for hanging in for that meeting, by the way. Much appreciated.
Past my bedtime, but we'll see. My name is Arlene Boulay, and I live at 55 Keith Circle in Killingworth. I am an owner of a small organic hair salon here in Guilford. I am currently a tenant at 2614 Boston Post Road at the Gatehouse West. I am looking to move my business to 2351 Boston Post Road. I want a waiver of the requirement of a professional prepaid site plan. So I want to move my business to.
You're not touching anything on the outside?
No, and it's a small business.
Which building is 2351 Boston Post Road? I'm sorry, what else is?
there's really not, there's like Solivati there, there's no water usage. The health inspector already checked that out for me, Dennis. Yeah, he's very aware of my business.
Which building is it? It's on the south side of the road?
It's on the
twist.
Boston Post Road, Building 2.
And it's across from West Lake Ave?
No, this is Joe Milano's.
Granite
Hill.
Yeah.
There are a cluster of buildings just after, what's that road?
Those yellow ones.
Joe
Brookview?
Milano.
Yeah, just before, just to get all this, the stuff, the crazy stuff out here, because I didn't see this. I know you can read the letter in a second. By change of use from, what is it, an office to a hair salon, park and everything is,
Yes.
we're good with all of that, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Right.
So,
It's on the north side of the road, farther west.
read that letter from Dennis, please.
Almost across from Anthony's.
Start reading.
This letter is from Dennis Johnson, Director of Health, dated today, August 16, 2017. Subject, Arlene Booley, Everlastings LLC, 2351 Boston Post Road, map 84, lot 12. Based upon current water use data for existing tenants, adequate wastewater disposal capacity is available within the septic system for the building for the applicant's proposed change in use to a hair salon. The applicant's proposed hair salon will be limited to 2 styling chairs and 2 styling chair wash stations. It is recommended that this applicant's proposed change be approved.
Thank you for that. Okay, is there any other questions on this one? It's pretty straightforward.
I couldn't support this more.
Okay, Alan, would you like to read that? I think you've been waiting
Move it
patiently.
that the Planning and Zoning Commission approve a site plan application change of use from an office to a hair salon at 2351 Boston Post Road, Suite 207, map 84, lot 12, as shown in the application dated 8/15/17. The application is approved with the following conditions. 1, this application is approved based upon the finding that it conforms with the zoning code.
I second.
Do we have any discussion on this one?
Mr. Chairman. We need more businesses in Guilford, and for her to consider staying here and upgrading, we couldn't ask for more. I think we all need to support this.
Phil?
I'm not going to repeat what he said.
Okay. Good? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, you're welcome. All right, we have a couple we're going to just receive tonight and set a public hearing. So Scott McDowell, 55 Seaview Avenue, map 29, lot 6, zone R3, coastal area management application for placement of a pre-built 12 by 20 storage shed on a gravel base, 273-91. Okay, September 6, 2017.
So moved. You didn't say the date.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Guilford Housing Authority, 32 Guilford Court, map 53, lot 18A, zone R1, special permit and site plan revision. Addition of 17 new parking spaces, relocate dumpster and installation of a 4-foot-high fence, 273-19, 273-97. Receive and set a public hearing date of September 6, 2017, to be continued to September 20th, 2017, for a mandatory second public hearing.
Mr. Chairman, before we do that, could I ask staff to make sure that we have the last hearing where the dumpster was such an issue that we had to have a second hearing about it?
Rich, I believe that was Boston Terrace. This
Oh,
is-
this is
That was
a different
Boston
one?
Terrace,
Then
yeah.
Fine, go ahead, schedule it up.
Can I get a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Other, Guilford Agricultural Society, Guilford Fairgrounds, request to add an event, Shoreline Puppy Up Walk, October 8th, 2017, 11 to 3.
We have to actually change the approval terms that require 6 months' notice. When we did this, because they were having wars with their neighbors, we made them give us 6 months written notice before the event.
Okay.
That's part of their approval.
Well, they were expected to do that, but we can still approve it.
Right.
Yes.
And please, that will ask them very nicely to make sure that they
They try.
right.
What is a puppy up walk?
They did include this event on their original list, they just didn't have the firm date.
Got it.
Okay. That sounds good to me. What do we do? We have to approve this? Is this how it works?
Yeah.
Okay, can I put that in motion?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Guilford Agricultural Society, Guilford Fairgrounds, request to add an event, the American Art Company Art Show, May 4th and 5th and 6th of 2018, well into 6 months.
What is this?
Move to approve.
Well, hold on. Rich has a question.
What is the American Art Company art show?
It's an art show.
Is it for profit? Is it not for
This
profit?
is supposed to be 501(c3) only.
Right, so it's got to be 501c3. So my question is,
Hold on, Bill's gonna look it up.
continue.
Why don't you table this? We got plenty of time.
Yeah, don't even worry about it, Phil. We're going to table this one, and we'll have them provide the 501c3 documentation. Fair enough?
Fair enough.
Okay.
He was actually here earlier, but he left, obviously.
Yeah.
He had
Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Phil, you on aye on that one? All right. Guilford Housing Authority, request to waive a special permit and site plan application fee.
So moved.
Second.
We're just good with that, right? Okay,
Call the vote.
all in favor?
Mr. Chairman, I
It's
make a
o-
motion, we pay these bills, $135.60 to Shore Publishing.
Second.
All in favor to pay bills?
Aye.
Aye.
We have a second bill here
Ooh.
for secretarial services. So this is when our young engaged person was out, and we had to fill in. This is $120 for that evening.
119.
119.
Do I get a motion to pay it?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Mr. Chairman, I
Wait,
reviewed.
Hold on, Walter has...
Before we review the minutes, I just wanted to mention, this is a set of regs from Westport involving aircraft takeoff and landing restrictions. I can give this to staff. This is under the heading of other business. Westport set up, this is 3 copies, so the same thing. Westport set these up a long time ago in order to improve the quiet enjoyment of residential properties in town. At this point, it's, prospective as opposed to an immediate issue, but I think it would behoove us to add these restrictions into our zoning code. It will very slightly help the business climate, and it will certainly help residents to have peace of mind as we move into the 21st century and as helicopters become cheap and pilots become reckless.
So we, according to Ray Bauer, are never allowed to discuss these things until they were noticed, and then we could discuss it at a regular meeting. But
This is a proposed, so we have to receive these things at some point.
So
typically,
I think you're not proposing this as to be received in a hearing set. You're proposing that we discuss this and think about it and work on it.
I'm proposing that we essentially receive at the next meeting, or alternatively move it over to the zoning or the planning.
I would definitely say let's turn it over to the...
To Josh.
To the Josh, in the zoning.
Yeah.
Right.
Is that okay?
I already gave Josh this text. I can also just forward you the digital copy of this text, which it's lasted on the books for Westport for a very long time, so they're very careful, but that's the point of the thing.
Thank you, Commissioner.
You're welcome.
Okay.
Chairman, I have reviewed the minutes from August the 2nd, regular meeting, and they appear to be substantially correct, so I make a motion that we receive them. Oh, we approve them. Sorry.
All in favor?
Aye.
Abstain?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, good. This passes. I was wondering, I didn't see those hands, guys. You just sat there.
Hey, he's being quiet.
Okay, can we...
Mr. Chairman, with no further business, I move we adjourn.
Note that I believe our new member is in attendance.
Yes, we're going to say hi.
Oh, wait, we shouldn't adjourn yet.
Oh, we can do
Hello, welcome.
Have you been sworn in?
Yes, sir.
Oh, you have, so you should have, you could have sat tonight.
You could have sat here.
That's okay, anyway, why don't you say, Peter, why don't you put him on? This is our newest member, Matt, and can you pronounce your last name for me?
Hello, my name is Matthew Yorzinski.
You'll be seated at our next meeting.
Yes, I'm looking forward to it.
Great,
Good
great
night.
addition, thanks, Matt.
Review the videos of, he can vote on 66I if he reviews the videos. He's a member.
He's got a lot of videos to review.
I've reviewed them.
Can we get a motion to close?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. That was another record I just set tonight.